Chapter 128, Forest Fight. The four bodyguards immediately split up, and two people began to charge at Jianchen with their saint weapons raised. They quickly entered the battle, and began to attack Jianchen together with the peak Saint Master strength middle-aged man. The bodyguards that had just joined were the troops' only two primary Saint Masters. With their entry, the pressure on Jianchen immediately increased by a lot. However, with just his profound steps and his fast sword, he was still evenly matched with the three Saint Masters, and showed no signs of being at a disadvantage. The youth also felt a trace of fear. Under the protection of the other two peak great Saint bodyguards, he quickly left the area. His figure soon disappeared without a trace. Although Jianchen sensed the youth's departure, he didn't try to chase after him. The three Saint Master bodyguards in front of him definitely wouldn't allow him to leave and harm the young master of the Tianxiong clan. Jianchen fought an intense battle against those three Tianxiong clan bodyguards in the forest. A lot of the surrounding fauna was affected by the battle, and soon, the entire area had become a mess. Quite a few thick and sturdy trees had even been cut in half. Once again dodging the large sword swinging toward him from the side, Jianchen launched a fierce attack at the primary Saint Master, preparing to break through him. As the sound of the sword splitting the air rang out, Jianchen's light wind sword suddenly turned into a blur as it quickly pierced toward the primary Saint Master in the form of countless blades. This forced the man to panic, and caused him to have no time to reform his defense. Eventually, Jianchen managed to form holes in the man's defense. Taking advantage of one of these holes, the light wind sword abruptly trembled as a silver flash of lightning pierced forward at a speed that was somewhat faster than before. Before the primary Saint Master could even react, the light wind sword had buried itself deep into the man's throat, the blood-soaked point poking out from the other side of the neck. Hail! Seeing the man be stabbed through the throat, the other two people's expressions suddenly changed as they shouted out in a tone mixed with grief. Jianchen's arm didn't pause at all. Immediately after the light wind sword pierced through the man's throat, he pulled it right out, and instantly shifted his attention to the other two. His body flickered as he silently appeared in front of the primary Saint Master without a trace, just like a demon. The light wind sword once again flashed like silver lightning as it was thrust forward. The middle-aged man's expression completely changed. He immediately lifted his saint weapon and held it in front of his throat when he saw the light wind sword heading towards him. Suddenly, the speeding light wind sword dropped downward, seemingly evading the large sword protecting the man's body, and began to pierce toward the man at a sharp incline from below his saint weapon. The middle-aged man was unable to react at all to the light wind sword's sudden change. Eventually, his eyes were filled with disbelief as the sword deeply pierced through his throat. At that moment, a biting cold wind blew past behind Jianchen. A large, 3-inch wide, two-handed sword slashed through the air with a powerful amount of saint force. Before it even reached Jianchen, the wind pressure generated from it had already caused Jianchen's clothes to stick tightly against his back. Feeling that chilly wind, Jianchen immediately pulled out his sword from the man's throat, and turned around to guard his front with his sword, without any hesitation. Clang! The large two-handed sword containing the powerful saint force fiercely collided with the light wind sword. The amount of energy it generated forced Jianchen back a few steps. After sending Jianchen backward with attack after attack, the middle-aged man's gaze shifted to the bodyguard that had already been pierced through the throat by Jianchen. The crimson blood was currently surging outward like a fountain from the throat. As life began to gradually fade from his eyes, his expression was still frozen in disbelief. A moment later, his entire body slowly collapsed to the ground. With reddening eyes, the man glared at Jianchen fiercely like a bloodthirsty, ferocious beast. He exploded in anger. Even if I die today, I have to kill and behead you as revenge for my brothers. Powerful saint force began to gather on the large sword in the middle-aged man's hands. He raised the sword tip up, and with a heavy push of his feet off the ground, he quickly charged at Jianchen. Jianchen's gaze hardened as he locked onto the middle-aged man. His grip on the light wind sword couldn't help but tighten. He had already seen the middle-aged man's plans to kill him. Faced with this peak Saint Master that was unafraid of death, Jianchen was faced with some trouble. After all, his current strength was only at the middle great saint level. The difference between that and a peak Saint Master was still a pretty large gap. The layer of thick, hazy white light that surrounded the blade was evidently more dense than it had been before. Heavy yet penetrating sword chi was faintly released from the light wind sword. Just as the middle-aged man was about to charge forward, Jian Chen's right shoulder suddenly jolted, and the light wind sword in his hand split the air as it pierced outward. The needle-thin, silver-colored sword chi was shot out from the sword point, and sped toward the middle-aged man at a speed that made it hard to track with the naked eye. Seeing this slender yet dense amount of sword chi, the middle-aged man didn't dare to be careless. The sword flew at him so quickly that he didn't have time to dodge, so without any better options, the man could only release all of the saint force he had left into his sword as he swung it downwards. The moment the man's giant two-handed sword made contact with Jian Chen's sword chi-enhanced sword, the two-handed sword easily scattered apart the sword chi after some minor obstructions. At the same time, Jian Chen suddenly moved toward the man a few meters in front of him in a way that made him resemble a blur with his light wind sword ready to attack. The middle-aged man immediately retracted the large sword to block Jian Chen's attack. Afterward, the two began to fight intensely once more. In his previous world, Jian Chen's swordplay had already reached the pinnacle, and even though this middle-aged man was stronger than him, the man's understanding of the ways of the sword was merely a drop in a bucket compared to him. His sword was at a speed thought to be inconceivable, and the way he used it had already reached a level of perfection. Against the stronger, middle-aged man, he would not be able to go against Jian Chen's sword for much longer since his defense wouldn't be able to keep up. Jian Chen began to attack every part of the man's body with quick precision. Using his light wind sword, it was already like a blur that was impossible to see the blade move. And with it, Jian Chen continued to quickly attack the man to the point where resisting was becoming a challenging task. In addition, every attack the light wind sword made was fatal. This forced the middle-aged man to lose his chances of heavily injuring Jian Chen at the stake of getting wounded himself. At the moment, the middle-aged man extremely regretted his actions. At the same time, he bitterly hated the Tianxiong clan's young master. Originally, this journey had been completely incident-free. Unfortunately, this young master of the Tianxiong clan who didn't know the difference between heaven and earth had purposely decided to provoke this fiend in front of him. Innocently getting into some trouble was fine, but in the end, it had harmed them to the point where two of the brothers he'd known for dozens of years had died. In addition, he himself was now stuck in a dangerous situation. He most likely wouldn't even have a chance to live after today. For a while, the two people fought like flashes of lightning. Eventually, the middle-aged man was unable to block in time, and Jian Chen's viper-like light wind sword stabbed him in the heart. Chapter 129, Trouble at the Door. Looking at the sword piercing towards his heart with sluggish eyes, the middle-aged man couldn't believe what he was seeing. Being defeated by a brat barely past the age of 20 years old with a strength that wasn't even at the peak great saint level, was truly humiliating. Because of the arrogant talk of the Tianxiong clan's young master, his 50 years of cultivation had been laid to waste by a 20-year-old youth. Out in the middle of nowhere, his life was destroyed in a single moment. Just thinking about this fact made the man nearly cry out with grief. As his life essence slowly escaped from him, the man's bright and clear eyes slowly clouded over and rolled back into his skull as his sturdy body fell to the ground. Jian Chen slowly retracted his light wind sword. Blood flowed down the blade as if it were alive, slowly gathering at the tip before falling to the ground, drop by drop. After a few battles, the uneven dirt ground had become wet with blood. Jian Chen slowly caught his breath. Attacking two primary Saint Masters and a peak Saint Master consumed quite a bit of Jian Chen's energy. Faced with three opponents whose strength all surpassed his own, Jian Chen had already made an all-out effort. If it weren't for the fact that he had cultivated for a while, increasing his base strength as a middle great saint by quite a bit, he most likely would have spent a much longer time on trying to kill these three Saint Masters. However, after killing the three people, Jian Chen's grief from the deaths of Captain Kendall and the others had abated quite a bit. Jian Chen's gaze indifferently swept across the three corpses, before finally falling onto their space belts. After some hesitation, he slowly advanced forward to retrieve the belts and examine their contents. Because he had consumed over 100 times more monster cores than the average person in his cultivation, Tianxiong required a great amount of them. Moreover, Tianxiong clearly didn't have enough money to purchase such an extensive amount of monster cores. That's why the thing he wanted to acquire the most were monster cores. It was only possible for him to gain them by killing magical beasts or by taking them from corpses. Besides, taking items from a dead person was an extremely common occurrence in Tianyuan continent. After all, 30% or more of the fights that happened on Tianyuan continent were because people were seeking another party's items. After removing the 3 space belts, Tianxiong inspected their contents. Although these 3 were Saint Masters, it was clear that they weren't wealthy. Aside from some everyday products and camping tools, they really didn't have anything else. In the end, Tianxiong was only able to fish out some 10 purple and gold coins, 15 Class 2 monster cores, and 5 Class 3 monster cores. Without any hesitation, Tianxiong stored the monster cores into his own space belt. His gaze shifted back to the 10 purple and gold coins and he hesitated for a bit before finally taking those as well. Although it wasn't a large amount of money, to commoners it was still quite a bit of wealth. Just throwing it out here was a waste, and rather a pity. After storing everything, Tianxiong tossed the 3 space belts to one side. Without bothering to clean up the corpses, he directly left the area. By the time he had returned to Wake City, the sky had already darkened. After eating some food at the hotel, Tianxiong requested a room and went to sleep. Because Tianxiong had only requested a normal room, its layout was extremely simple. It had a single wooden table, a few chairs, and a bed. Aside from these, there was nothing else present. However, the place was extremely neat and tidy, one could even say it was completely spotless. That night, the shining full moon suspended high up in the sky emitted bright rays of silver moonlight, filling the entire pitch-black sky with a faint silver color. Even the scattered, thin clouds could be seen clearly. Tianxiong moved his chair to the window side and sat there with his head raised. He looked up at that round moon emitting a bright glow while deep in thought. Perhaps it was more appropriate to say that he was in a sluggish daze. Tianxiong was constantly recalling the past 2 days in his mind. The Flame Mercenary group had been hunted down by the Class 5 magical beast Golden Fur Tiger King, and eventually, the members had sacrificed their lives to hold the beast back, shielding Tianxiong so that he could flee. Although 2 days had already passed, and the grief from the deaths of the Flame Mercenaries had faded quite a bit, Tianxiong was still unable to forget the scene. That scenario had been branded deeply into the depths of his soul, and he would most likely never forget it for the rest of his life. It could be said that he and the Flame Mercenaries were strangers that had come together by chance. Although during the past few days, everyone's relationships had grown quite close, they had chosen to die for the sake of covering for Tianxiong and letting him flee. Although there were also some selfish motives for this, they all understood that faced by the pursuit of the Golden Fur Tiger King, they had absolutely no way of running away. Despite knowing this, their actions had still impacted Tianxiong's heart by quite a lot. Captain Kendall, what is your greatest wish? My greatest wish is to make the Flame Mercenary Group become the #1 mercenary group in the continent. A scene appeared in Tianxiong's mind as he sat next to the window. His originally lifeless eyes gradually recovered their vigor, tightly clenching his fists as he murmured, Captain Kendall, you were the strongest one in the Flame Mercenary Group. I had never imagined that back then, you'd be the first to depart. During these past few days, you were always the one that had cared for me the most. Now that you're gone, your life's greatest wish can no longer become true. In that case, let me make your wish come true in your stead. I, Tianxiong, swear that I will spend my life trying my utmost to make the Flame Mercenary Group the #1 mercenary group in the Tianyuan continent. Tianxiong said resolutely. Tianxiong untied the space belt that Captain Kendall had given him. He stared at the belt in his hand in a trance as the memories of the words that Kendall had imparted to him when handing him this belt replayed in his mind. Tianxiong, don't refuse. If we can't leave this forest alive, then our families will all be under your care. If we all die here, then their lives will become incomparably painful. Whether or not my parents, my wife, and even my one child will be able to live through the days after my death will all depend on you. Jian let out a long breath. He suddenly felt extremely guilty. Captain Kendall had given this space belt to him before his death, entrusting Jian with his family's well-being. However, even now, Jian still didn't know what the names of those in Captain Kendall's family were, or even where they lived. How was he supposed to act? Just then, Jian heart suddenly became filled with worry. If Captain Kendall had entrusted Jian to take care of his family, Jian guessed that Captain Kendall's family was definitely extremely impoverished. After losing Captain Kendall, their pillar of support, how could his family possibly live the rest of their lives happily? When thinking of how incomparably difficult Kendall's family's lives would be from now, Jian heart fell into panic. He wanted to find Kendall's family as soon as possible, and give them whatever Captain Kendall had entrusted Jian with in order to bless them with happy lives. Jian sat by the window for the latter half of the night, before eventually returning to his bed to cultivate. Right now, Jian needed to grow stronger, and even stronger. The night was calm, and it quickly passed by without incident. The next morning, Jian, who had been submerged in cultivation, suddenly opened his eyes. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a bad premonition in his heart. Jian got out of bed and walked up to the window to look outside. After a single glance, Jian expression abruptly darkened. The outside of the hotel had been surrounded by hundreds of people wearing white robes. Every single one of them were identically dressed. From this, it could be seen that they represented a single power. Jian unexpectedly discovered that in the middle of the group of people was the young master of the Tianxiong clan that had escaped from him yesterday. Chapter 130. Trapped in the restaurant. Seeing the group of people outside the restaurant, Jian expression immediately hardened. Since the moment he saw the young master of the Tianxiong clan standing in the middle, he had already guessed that the reason these people had gathered here so early in the morning was because of him. After all, yesterday he had not only committed an offense against the Tianxiong clan's young master, but also killed 3 of the clan's strong bodyguards. In short, he had already earned the hatred of the Tianxiong clan yesterday. After all, peak Saint Masters still counted as very good hands in a remote place like Wake City. No matter in which clan in Wake City one was, peak Saint Masters all had pretty high positions. If a clan lost a peak Saint Master, as well as 2 primary Saint Masters, for no reason and didn't regain face, the clan's military power in the city would undoubtedly decrease by quite a lot. This was extremely important to a clan's future. Right now, the entire restaurant had been surrounded by the Tianxiong clan. Wanting to leave here without anyone knowing was impossible. Jian could only helplessly leave his room and walk toward the main entrance of the restaurant. Although he was getting closer to his doom, and the opposite party had hundreds of people as well as some strong experts, there wasn't a single trace of panic or concern in Jian expression. He looked just as calm as he normally did. When Jian walked downstairs and arrived at the restaurant's lower floor, he discovered that there were already many people gathered there. It was currently the peak hours of breakfast, and all of the tables in the lobby were filled with bowls and dishes emitting the fragrant aroma of meat. However, not a single person was sitting at those tables and enjoying the bountiful breakfast. Instead, they were all swearing as they stood up from their seats and slowly began to walk outside the door with indignant expressions. That Tianxiong clan is too damn arrogant. I was happily eating here before they suddenly commanded all of us to leave. Whatever random crap you guys do has nothing to do with us. We're just eating our own meals, it's not like we'd hinder you. That's right, that Tianxiong clan really thinks of themselves as Wake City's #1 clan. They've become undisciplined and out of control even though they're just a small clan. When they encounter those famous experts in Tianyuan continent, they'll be eradicated with just a slight stretch of a finger. Most of the people eating in the restaurant were mercenaries. Some of the more short-tempered and braver ones grumbled as they left, but they said their complaints quite softly, as if murmuring to themselves. Not a single person dared to say it out loud. Despite this, the soldiers were all at a certain level of strength, and could hear the murmurs loud and clear. The majority of the few merchants in the restaurant didn't dare to show any signs of dissatisfaction in their expressions. They obediently left their seats and hurriedly walked out of the restaurant. Only the merchants that had certain amounts of strength were left. They all had expressions of extreme dissatisfaction. They were pretty much all foreigners, and although they weren't afraid of the Tianxiong clan, a strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake. It was clear that they wouldn't go against the Tianxiong clan over such a minor thing and stir up more trouble for themselves. Thus, they eventually all walked out of the restaurant as well. There were 4 white-robed middle-aged men guarding the restaurant entrance. Their powerful, electric-like gazes unceasingly scanned the people leaving. Although they had also heard a few of the mercenaries curse the Tianxiong clan in dissatisfaction, they didn't dare to say a single word, and acted as if they hadn't heard the curses. Quite a few of the mercenaries in the restaurant were foreigners that had some level of power backing them up, or were a part of a mercenary group. Although the Tianxiong clan proclaimed itself as a leading clan in Wake City, they didn't want to upset any outside powers because some of them were so powerful that even the Tianxiong clan couldn't afford to provoke them. Soon, the restaurant's customers had all left. In such a large restaurant, the only ones remaining were some servants standing there in a daze, at a loss of what to do. The restaurant owner also stood to one side with an expression of concern as he stared unblinkingly at the vacant restaurant. His face revealed the pain that he was unable to voice out. Quite a bit of income had disappeared. At that moment, the only one still in the restaurant aside from the owner and the servants was Jian Chen. Even the customers that had been resting on the upper floor had been forcefully oppressed and brought out by the restaurant servants. Jian Chen sat on a chair with a leisurely expression, staring with interest at the group of Tianxiong clan's people still holding fort outside the restaurant. His expression was completely relaxed. Although Jian Chen seemed to be carefree on the outside, he had actually put up his guard ages ago. After all, this time they had arrived with ill intentions. Moreover, he clearly sensed that there were quite a few powerful experts among these people. At that moment, the young master of the Tianxiong clan that Jian Chen had encountered yesterday in Magical Beast Mountain Range walked into the restaurant with the protection of a large group of people. As soon as he entered the restaurant, the young master's gaze fell onto the sneering Jian Chen sitting on the chair. A sinister look flashed in the young master's eyes. "Brat, I didn't expect that you'd still be here today. Yesterday, I let you off. Today, I'll pull you out from your roots," the young master said with a cold smile. He looked at Jian Chen and said, "What about it? Are you scared? Do you regret it now?" The group of Tianxiong clan members standing behind the youth all sharply looked at Jian Chen. Jian Chen lightly snorted in disdain. His gaze swept across the crowd of people standing behind the young master as he said, "Don't tell me that you think this amount of people is enough to scare me? You're being a bit too self-confident." The young master of the Tianxiong clan sneered back as he said, "You're even more arrogant than I thought. However, I can't help but admire your ability to talk big. Even at a moment like this, you still won't admit your mistake or kneel down and beg me for mercy. Could it be that you think you can walk away alive today in front of so many of Tianxiong clan's experts? Furthermore, I brought at least 100 people with me today," the young master said with unrivaled confidence. In his opinion, he would definitely devour Jian Chen today. Jian Chen couldn't help but smile faintly at these words. Just now, he had suddenly discovered that talking with a hedonistic son of rich parents like him, who had never been out in the world, was an extremely amusing thing to do. "Then do you believe me when I say that not only will I leave here today, but I will also break all of your soldiers at the same time?" Jian Chen's tone gradually turned darker as he spoke. Chapter 131, Death Siege, 1. Hearing Jian Chen's haughty words, the young master of the Tianxiong clan couldn't help but laugh. He stared at Jian Chen like he was stupid before sneering in disdain. "Just you alone? Humph, fine then. I'll see for myself if you can escape from this entrapment. Show me how many casualties you can inflict on these Tianxiong clan mercenaries with your abilities." The young master had brought over 100 mercenaries with at least half of them being of the great saint level. There were also around a dozen saint masters, so he did not believe that this guy would be able to run away from them at all. Without wanting to waste any more breath on such superfluous talk with Jian Chen, the young master waved his hand and commanded, "Charge. I want this arrogant brat to be taught a good lesson." The few mercenaries by the young master's side looked at each other. One person sneered, "It's merely a brat, there's no need for all of us to make a move." Turning toward one of the Tianxiong representative mercenary troops, he commanded, "You guys go bring that brat over." "Yes, sir." Following the man's orders without any hesitation, the group immediately walked 10 meters forward to where Jianchen was. With a cold glare, one of the mercenaries growled, "Kid, it'd be best if you just obediently let yourself be captured and return with us to the Tianxiong clan. This way you'll suffer less, otherwise, I can guarantee you'll be in for a lot of pain." Jianchen held his head up high and stood at his original position defiantly. This was a time where he could show off his ability, and the silver light wind sword gradually materialized in his hand. In that instant, the aura around Jianchen completely changed. Everyone from the Tianxiong clan could tell what Jianchen was planning on doing based on his action. "Attack!" The man who spoke previously cried out, causing the group of mercenaries to call out their saint weapons as they charged toward Jianchen. Jianchen had a look of disdain on his face. To Jianchen, who could even kill experts of the Saint Master level, these mere saint users weren't worth even looking at. The moment the several people neared Jianchen, the light wind sword suddenly turned into a blurry mirage, and quickly pierced out in the form of multiple phantom swords. At the same time, the assaulters came to a screeching halt as trickles of blood began to pour from their throats. Then, faint traces of blood gradually appeared, and finally, dyed their clothes a bloody red as it suddenly burst out from their throats. In the end, all the men collapsed at the same time. The expressions of the few mercenaries standing by the young master simultaneously changed, and they exchanged glances. They could tell from the gaze in their opponent's eyes that he was extremely serious. The men that had died were saint-level cannon fodder who were used to scout out Jianchen's strength. No one really felt their deaths a shame. However, when they saw the technique Jianchen had used to kill the people, their hearts sank. In that moment, they could only see the faint image of his sword. Jianchen's was so fast that they could barely see it with their vision. In a flash, Jianchen had killed a group of mercenaries from the Tianxiong clan, immediately dominating over everyone present. Although the restaurant was overflowing with people, it was engulfed in a pin-drop silence. Tianxiong clan's group of mercenaries all looked at Jianchen in a daze. They hadn't thought that someone as young as Jianchen could fight against so many people from their clan with ease. He had even dared to kill the hired mercenaries right in front of the Tianxiong clan. This was truly shocking and unexpected. The Tianxiong clan had dominated Wake City for over a dozen years. Although they had clashed with many different mercenaries, they had never fought against someone of Jianchen's age who had dared to fight by himself. This was a first in the entire history of Wake City. After a small amount of hesitation, the white-robed man next to the young master said in a low voice, "Dear fellow, I don't know where you came from or what teacher you are taught under, but why must you oppose the Tianxiong clan?" Jianchen's display of strength at such a young age had revealed him to be a high-leveled expert, and the experts of the Tianxiong clan couldn't even make a guess on who was backing him up. They were all afraid that Jianchen had the support of someone they couldn't afford to offend. If they did, then it would perhaps bring a great amount of trouble for the Tianxiong clan. It was possible that the Tianxiong clan that had dominated Wake City for so long would be eliminated, just like that. This wasn't a result that any of them were willing to see. Although these mercenaries were employed by the Tianxiong clan and were not really affiliated with them, they weren't treated all that badly. After being employed by the clan for so long, the mercenaries had developed a few feelings for the clan, and none of them had any desire to see it be condemned to extinction over such a small matter. Jianchen sneered. Thanks to his experience as a traveler in his previous world, he had immediately guessed what the man was trying to get at. "I am a lone traveler, where I come from is no importance to you all. As for who my teacher is, I'm sorry, but up until this day, I have never had a teacher. Lastly, it was your Tianxiong clan that provoked me first, since when did it change to me being the one who made conflict?" Jianchen laughed coldly. Hearing that, the few middle-aged men immediately let loose a breath. Afterwards, the man that had previously talked continued, "Then you'd best come back to the Tianxiong clan with us. Otherwise, we won't show the smallest amount of mercy toward you." If you come out of this missing an arm or leg, it would be bad. After seeing Jianchen dispatch the group of mercenaries without any effort, these men didn't have any strong desires to fight against him. Although they had confidence that they could capture Jianchen, the lightning-like speed of his sword was something they was afraid of. If they were to get hurt, there was no way their profits would surpass their gains. If they could capture Jianchen without much effort, they would be extremely happy. In your dreams. Jianchen sneered. His right arm shook as the light wind sword quickly danced in the air, its tip flying toward the group of people. A large amount of sword chi enveloped the sword once more as Jianchen said, "Speak less bullshit. If you want to do something, then hurry up." Jianchen's provocation infuriated the entire Tianxiong clan. The young master had long since lost his patience. He immediately waved his hand as he roared, "Why are you guys just standing there? Hurry up and capture him." Although this group of people standing next to the young master did not have low status or positions, it was obvious that their backbone was still the young master of the Tianxiong clan. The moment the words left his mouth, this group of people began to charge forward. Chapter 132, Death Siege, 2, A strong killing aura flashed through Jianchen's eyes. Not waiting for the Tianxiong clan to advance any further, he lifted his own sword to attack. With a speed almost invisible to the naked eye, the light wind sword flashed out at the swords approaching Jianchen. Against such a fast sword, even the stronger people in the group weren't able to properly defend themselves. The moment the sword finished its downward arc, the mercenaries had immediately fallen to the ground. A small trickle of blood flowed silently from their throats and stained the ground beneath them an iridescent, red color. But the Tianxiong clan had brought over 100 people, so the deaths of such a small amount of people was of no concern to them. Another group began to charge rampantly toward Jianchen with sounds so loud that their stampeding echoed. Seeing the group of people that didn't seem to know death charge forward, Jianchen's glare turned cooler. With a sigh, he increased the speed of his sword thrusts, and each one of the mercenaries found their throats stabbed. In their hearts, they knew this was a fatal blow and that there was not a single amount of mercy to be found within Jianchen. Even though Jianchen knew that the Tianxiong clan was a major clan in Wake City, he wasn't at all afraid of matters like this. Now that he was by himself once more, he didn't have anyone behind him he had to worry about, so there was nothing to be anxious about. Jianchen's petite body constantly wove through his attackers as his light wind sword endlessly flashed around. With every arc of his sword, another person would fall, and thanks to his fierce battle strength, the entire restaurant had become a place of chaos. The chairs and tables that were previously organized neatly were now scattered about, while the fragrant dishes of food had crashed and spilled to the ground. As fast as a demon, Jianchen quickly dispatched mercenary after mercenary. Within the span of a few seconds, another 10 mercenaries had fallen, never to rise again. It was almost as if Jianchen had eyes on the back of his head that could observe everything on the battleground. Every single time a mercenary swung his saint weapon, Jianchen would barely dodge the danger at the critical point. He was a single man facing dozens of people, but even after fighting for some time, he hadn't received any wounds. Even as the mercenaries tried their hardest to slash at him, Jianchen's clothes didn't even have the slightest tear. Seeing his mercenaries fall to the floor one by one without Jianchen sustaining any wounds, the young master of the Tianxiong clan scowled with dissatisfaction before cursing, "This group is useless, useless. Everyone here is good for nothing. I didn't know that my father had raised such a useless amount of trash that even a dozen of them couldn't seize a single person." He shook his head, turned to look at the man to his side before barking out, "What are you and your men standing around for? Hurry up and capture him. Once he is taken back to the Tianxiong clan, I will show him my awesomeness. Anyone that's insulted me has never gotten away with it. He won't be an exception." The group of people the young master had yelled at was all the strongest mercenaries. With their statuses, they would definitely be highly respected, even in the Tianxiong clan. After not being given face by the young master as he yelled at them, they couldn't help but feel annoyed. The men looked at each other before one of them spoke out, "Although this person is young, he is extraordinarily strong. His movements and the speed of his sword are incomparably fast. Even if it were us going against him, we would have difficulty as well. Moreover, all of his sword strikes so far have been fatal. If the mercenaries did not die by a sword through their throats, then they died from having their hearts pierced. From this, you can see that this person is not simple at all. Facing him head-on right now would be an unwise decision, and we may even get injured. For now, it would be best to call a few people over for him to waste his saint force over. The moment he uses up all of his saint force, we will strike and win easily. Not bad, I approve of this suggestion. The man's suggestion had been quickly endorsed by the other mercenaries. Although, this would increase the amount of casualties among the Tianxiong clan, the responsibility of that would fall upon the young master himself and not the mercenaries themselves. And since this second-generation master didn't care for them at all, they weren't willing to throw away their lives for him. If it meant throwing away the lives of others to persevere their own lives, they would do it. Following up, another squad of mercenaries entered the restaurant to kill Jian Chen. The people in this group were of the great saint level, so they were stronger than the previous group by a large margin. Jian Chen immediately engaged the great saints in a fierce battle. Against a group who was much stronger than before, Jian Chen's pressure had greatly increased. He would not be able to fight as easily as before. As the fighting grew more and more intense, the entire restaurant became even more ruined. All of the surrounding walls had holes kicked through them, causing the entire restaurant to be on the verge of collapsing. Outside of the restaurant, a large crowd of people had gathered, and were passionately gossiping about the fight that was happening inside. Inside the restaurant. In a brilliant flash of silver, Jian Chen stabbed one of the great saints in the heart, killing him instantly. Stamping on the chest of the man, he sent the body flying backward, creating yet another hole in the walls of the restaurant before the body flew out. The restaurant shuddered violently once more, each sway stronger than the last. Finally, the loud crunching sounds of wood could be heard as it trembled once more. Jian Chen nimbly dodged the blades of 3 saint weapons while looking at the wobbling pillars of the restaurant. Without any hesitation, he pushed the mercenaries away as he escaped from the newly created hole, out onto the streets. Chase after him. Don't let him get away. The moment he saw Jian Chen leave the restaurant, the young master cried out at the mercenaries to chase after him. After the young master had spoken out, the group of mercenaries next to him had also cried out, "Not good, the restaurant's about to collapse, escort the young master away to safety." Immediately, a middle-aged man grabbed the young master by the shoulders before bringing him out of the way of the collapsing restaurant. Everyone else followed closely behind. The moment the group ran out of the restaurant, the entire restaurant caved in. In that moment, the mercenaries that didn't make it in time were buried. Soon after, a silver ray of light came flying toward the young master of the Tianxiong clan. Chapter 133, The Death of the Young Master of the Tianxiong Clan. Young Master, be careful. The middle-aged man cried out as he discovered the trajectory of the flashing white light. His face grew paler by 2 shades as he realized the sword was going too fast. With the sword already a meter from the young master's throat, under this type of situation, there was simply no time to react. PCH. Because of the lightning-like sword strike, the barely saint-level young master practically had no chance to react, and so the light-wind sword stabbed itself deeply into his throat. The young master of the Tianxiong clans widened his eyes as he looked dead on at the sword in his throat. There was a look of disbelief. He was not expecting this outcome at all. To think that this depressed little mercenary he had come across on the road to the magical beast mountain range would unexpectedly be the one to end his life. If he had known about this before, he wouldn't have dared to come close to Jian Chen, but it was a shame that there was no such thing as a regret pill in this world for him to eat. Right now, his destiny was all but confirmed, and there was a better chance for him to alter the mountain range's landscape than this. Seeing their young master already have his throat pierced, the mercenaries by his side all stared in great shock. Some had even paled instantaneously. They were fully aware that the person in front of them was the young master of the Tianxiong clan who was dearly loved by the clan leader. He was also the successor of the clan when the time came, so to see their young master be killed right in front of their eyes, they couldn't believe it. If the clan leader were to hear of this news, no one knew how furious he would become, and how severe their penalties would be. Just thinking about the severe temper of the Tianxiong clan leader had sent shivers among all of the mercenaries. Each one of them began to look at Jian Chen with rage. If they weren't able to bring Jian Chen back with them, then they would be served as a substitute instead. "Brat, you've killed our young master, prepare to die." All of the mercenaries began to charge at Jian Chen without hesitation while shouting out, "All Tianxiong mercenaries, surround him immediately. Don't let him escape." These mercenaries all held high statuses in the Tianxiong clan, so the moment they spoke, every other members of the Tianxiong clan threw away their hesitation and immediately surrounded Jian Chen from all four sides. At the same time, everyone that had been watching quickly distanced themselves further away. Even under the collapsed restaurant, a stream of mercenaries crawled out looking disheveled, but they continued to join the other mercenaries. Every single mercenary in the vicinity had seen with their own eyes the death of their young master by the hands of Jian Chen, so they fully understood the gravity of the situation. Everyone took a step back in order to divert attention from themselves. At this moment, no one was willing to go and inform the clan leader. They were afraid of being implicated in the death of the young master and suffering the wrath in place of Jian Chen. After landing the killing blow on the young master, Jian Chen had immediately started to fight with the middle-aged mercenaries. These mercenaries were of the Saint Master level, and 3 of them were even at the peak Saint Master level. Against so many Saint Masters, the pressure was on full blast, causing Jian Chen to have to go all out. Jian Chen and the mercenaries continued to exchange blows in an endless storm of blades and fists that left the mercenaries flustered. Taking advantage of the situation, Jian Chen had used his light wind sword and immediately stabbed one of the mercenaries through his heart. The moment Jian Chen had stabbed into the middle-aged man's heart, a big axe had landed onto his left shoulder, leaving behind a wound that trickled and dyed his clothes red with blood. Feeling an immense amount of pain in his left shoulder, Jian Chen's face immediately whitened. Pulling out his sword from the man's chest, he rapidly thrusted it at the mercenary with the axe. Seeing the silver flash of the light wind sword, the man with the axe immediately narrowed his eyes in concentration and brought his weapon up in front to receive the blow. At the moment of impact, the man was thrown backward by the explosive force. Ding! The tip of the light wind sword had stabbed into the blade of the axe. But thanks to the amount of sword chi around the sword, it had left a noticeable dent in the glossy blade. A sharp metallic sound was heard as 5 Saint weapons immediately headed toward Jian Chen at the same time while cutting off any possible escape routes for Jian Chen. The amount of Saint force that was radiating from each weapon was enough to cause a massive amount of air fluctuations. Jian Chen's eyes flashed in annoyance as the amount of sword chi on his light wind sword was increased several times over, making the sword seem even hazier than before. In a flash he struck out at the 5 Saint weapons and struck each one with a clang. While the light wind sword had stopped the 5 Saint weapons, Jian Chen's face grew white slightly as his right arm began to shake marginally. This combined strike was the unified strength of all 5 mercenaries, which would be extremely difficult to accept with ease. Because of the large amount of force put behind the 5 mercenaries, Jian Chen's entire right arm had gone numb as even his inner organs had been temporarily shaken. Ha! Angrily shouting out, the Saint Masters didn't dare let Jian Chen have the opportunity to breathe and rest. Once more striking at him, these mercenaries were extraordinarily clever. Unless there was a hole in their attack pattern, Jian Chen would find it hard to defend himself without getting seriously harmed. A fierce expression revealed itself on Jian Chen's face as he unexpectedly stood in front of the 5 Saint weapons. His light wind sword then transformed in a silver streak of light as it flew at the closest person at breakneck speed. PCH. The light wind sword met no obstructions as it penetrated the man's throat. At the same time, the 5 Saint weapons that were on the verge of cutting into him had their Saint force already about to touch his clothes. In a split second, Jian Chen's body twisted in a way that had dodged 3 of the Saint weapons, but the remaining 2 had struck him on the back and waist. Jian Chen stifled a shout as his already white face grew even more pale. He immediately pulled his sword from the throat of one of the mercenaries and looked at the remaining fighters. He threw away the idea of continuing to fight zealously and began to plan his way of escape from this area. Jianchen clearly understood that the Tianxiong clan had a formidable amount of power. The longer he stayed here, the more unfavorable his position would be. With his current strength, he would only be able to fight against a Saint Master. If the Tianxiong clan had a great Saint Master, he would be in trouble. However, with his remaining amount of strength, it would not be enough to defend himself. Sensing Jianchen's plan to escape, one of the remaining Saint Masters immediately cried out, "Block him quickly. Don't let him escape." Chapter 134, Wrath of the Tianxiong clan. Sensing that Jianchen was planning to escape, one of the remaining Saint Masters immediately cried out, "Block him quickly. Don't let him escape." The vigilant mercenaries surrounding the Saint Masters and Jianchen immediately charged forward to block Jianchen heroically. The Saint weapons in their hands immediately came down toward Jianchen, and despite knowing how exceptionally strong Jianchen was, those who came forward to block him were not afraid at all. Jianchen's legs blurred slightly, causing him to deviate from his original path and onto the side. Dodging the numerous Saint weapons, his right arm shook as his light wind sword danced wildly all around. One by one, the mercenaries that had tried to block him fell to the ground. How would saints or great saints be able to defend against Jianchen's usage of the profound steps? Despite being injured and having his fighting ability lowered, if Jianchen were to use his entire strength, these mercenaries still wouldn't have a chance. After killing the mercenaries with lightning speed, Jianchen twisted his body without any hesitation, and began to run away from the mercenaries, as if possessed by a demon. As for the people that were observing the fight, they immediately left the road as soon as they saw him charge straight at them. It was almost as if they were afraid of obstructing Jianchen and meeting the same fate the Tianxiong clan members had. Jianchen had fought against the Tianxiong clan by himself while killing a few high-ranking experts, and even 2 peak Saint Masters, completely unafraid of the Tianxiong clan. The fact that he had even killed the young master of the clan had scared the mercenaries so much that they didn't dare to provoke him. In fact, some people had started to see him as a person with the strength of a great Saint Master. This type of person was rare to see even in a large group of mercenaries. Jianchen was moving at an extraordinary speed. In a short moment, he was already 30 meters away from the group of mercenaries watching him. At that moment, because there wasn't enough time, the mercenaries that were watching him simply weren't fast enough to open a path for him. Just as Jianchen was about to reach the group of mercenaries, his 2 feet suddenly stomped on the ground, pushing his entire body into the air. His feet still in a running position, the amount of force behind his leap was tremendous, sending him flying 10 meters away from the mercenaries. The moment his body touched the ground, Jianchen began to run away from them once more. After him. Hurry up and chase him. Don't let him escape. Catch him quickly. He's trying to escape from the city. Someone send a message to the city military officers to close the gates. A collection of furious, impatient shouts were heard as the mercenaries charged in from behind with deafening sounds. The few Saint Masters had followed Jianchen's actions and leapt over the observers, before quickly disappearing into the streets. The great Saint and Saint-level mercenaries quickly followed behind. Roar! Not too long after they entered the streets, the angry snarl of a magical beast could be heard from behind. The roar caused the entire street to shake, almost as if there was an earthquake. The mercenaries that were still standing around to watch suddenly cleared the road as an ox-like magical beast came charging through. Mounted on top of the magical beast was a sturdy, middle-aged man wearing a gold-embroidered robe. From his appearance, he looked to be approaching his 50s, and his serious expression made him seem even more imposing. His pupils as dark as the night itself shone with a cold glare that made many of the weaker mercenaries unable to look at him in the face. In a remote city like Wake City, people that had the ability to ride magical beasts were a very rare sight. One thing was for sure, however, if the person who was riding a magical beast was not a high-leveled expert, then it was a person from a noble clan. That was because only these 2 types of people could typically use magical beasts as mounts. Following behind the middle-aged magical beast rider was a group of about 50 people. Each member stood in a clean formation with a serious expression, and they looked like soldiers who were well trained. The exact moment the middle-aged man came into view, everyone's eyes focused in on him. The entire area descended into a strange silence. But soon after, the observing mercenaries all began to comment to each other. "Isn't that the Tianxiong clan's leader, Tianxiong Lai? I didn't think he'd arrive so soon." It is said that not only is the Tianxiong clan the strongest clan in Wake City, but the clan leader is also extremely strong. He has already reached the middle Great Saint Master realm, and also possesses a defense based on his Earth attribute Saint Force as well. In all of Wake City, there are very few people that can contend against the Tianxiong clan's Tianxiong Lai. The young master of the Tianxiong clan is the result of years of hard work by Tianxiong Lai. It was with great difficulty that he had raised a son. It could even be said just giving birth to him was difficult enough. Ever since the young master's birth, Tianxiong Lai had treated him like an expensive treasure. I don't know how angry Tianxiong Lai will become after finding out his son has been killed. His son had been the only candidate for passing on Tianxiong clan's legacy. Tianxiong Lai, who was sitting on the magical beast, stared down at the mercenaries below him with a frosty glare. However, the moment his eyes fell on the white-robed youth on the floor, his eyes suddenly went rigid as an intense killing intent flooded out of him. His face began to grow red, even his breathing became laborious, and his facial expression changed to one of disbelief. Kong Air. Tianxiong Lai cried out with a slight tremble in his voice. Jumping down from his mount, he ran over to where his son lay with wide eyes. Tianxiong Lai's face paled rapidly as he studied the all-too-familiar face on the ground with a look of utter shock. Kong Air. Tianxiong Lai cried out in anguish as he shook the youth's shoulder with both his hands. Feeling the icy body, Tianxiong Lai's heart felt like it had shattered. From his vast amount of experience, he already knew that this person had already stopped breathing and died. Kong Air. Kong Air. Tianxiong Lai continued to cry out in sorrow as tears began to flow from his eyes. His clear tears fell from his eyes, slowly flowing down his son's steadfast face, and eventually falling to the ground and breaking. Tianxiong Kong was the sole heir to Tianxiong Lai. Because of an injury to his body, he had long since been rendered unable to have children. But this child had been his proudest achievement, and he had always doted on this son of his. Since it was impossible for him to have children, Tianxiong Kong was the clan's darling treasure. But now that Tianxiong Lai's pride and joy were suddenly killed, his heart had been attacked and crushed in a way that was impossible to describe with words. Tianxiong Lai looked to be around 40 to 50 years old, but that was because of the normal life expectancy of those on the Tianyuan continent, as well as his cultivation. In reality, he was already within his 70s, and with the injuries he had sustained earlier in life, he was utterly incapable of reproducing. Who was it that killed my Kong Air? No matter who it is, I Tianxiong Lai will rip their body apart into 1,000 pieces. Chapter 135. Escape from Wake City. Wake City may have been a third-class city with a small amount of permanent residents, but because of its proximity to the magical Beast Mountain range and the amount of fertile land around them, the amount of people that flowed in and out of the city was at a constant high. There were countless merchants and peddlers trying to sell their wares in the streets of Wake City. Some stores were selling almost anything imaginable, but among all the stores, restaurants held the dominant spot in the industry. Mercenaries and merchants in caravans endlessly walked the streets while gossiping among each other. The clamor in the streets was truly a sign that Wake City was flourishing. However, at this moment, there was a huge disturbance on those same streets. Everyone could only see a youthful figure with blood-soaked clothes come running toward them at breakneck speeds. The appearance of the youth had been noticed by many people on the streets, who all pointed and began to chat with each other. Whoever blocks that person will be heavily rewarded by the Tianxiong clan. At the same time, a thunderous yell came from behind. A few more disheveled figures came running out from behind as they chased after the youth at equally fast speeds. Tianxiong clan, they're from the Tianxiong clan. The Tianxiong clan is the #1 clan in Wake City. I wouldn't dare to provoke the person that has committed an offense against the Tianxiong clan. After hearing the middle-aged man's words, many mercenaries began to whisper to each other. However, not a single person decided to chase after that youth and block his path. That youth was Jian Qin, the one who had easily killed the young master of the Tianxiong clan, as well as a few other mercenaries affiliated with them. Jian Shen hurried on over toward the city gates. Whenever he came across an obstruction, he would quickly fly over it with extreme speed. Despite this, there were still a few Saint Masters that were chasing him closely. However, Jian Chen's use of the profound steps had put him at an advantage, so even though those middle-aged men were stronger than him, they were unable to overtake him. They would at least need to be at the great saint level with a wind-attributed saint force in order to overwhelm him, otherwise, their speed was only enough to barely keep up with Jian Chen's level. Plus, they weren't able to overcome the obstacles as easily as Jian Chen had. Despite being a third-class city, the amount of area Wake City spanned across was still huge. Even if Jian Chen hurried to the city gates as fast as he possibly could, the period would at least take the amount of time it takes for a candle to burn. Having put all his effort into running away, Jian Chen was now breathing quite hard. He had previously just engaged in a fierce battle that consumed quite a bit of his saint force, and now he was even injured. The burden that he felt from running with all his might under his current condition was extremely great. In addition, his body was feeling the intense pain from his wounds every time he moved, so Jian Chen's nerves were being put to the severe test. Up ahead, the gigantic and majestic towers of the city gates blurrily came into view, along with the soldiers on it. Right now, Jian Chen was about 5 kilometers away from the city gates, while the Saint Masters behind him were about 50 meters away from him. Seeing the city gates get closer and closer, Jian Chen's heart couldn't help but relax a bit, although his speed didn't lessen. Jian Chen was aware that with his current strength, there was no way for him to go against the Tianxiong clan, which had an enormous influence over Wake City. Right now, all Jian Chen wanted to do was to escape from Wake City. That way, the amount of danger would decrease drastically. Roar! At this moment, the angry roar of a magical beast came from behind Jian Chen. As the roar dissipated, another angry shout followed soon after. I, Tianxiong Lai, will heavily reward whoever catches that man. Hearing the sounds coming from behind, Jian Chen's face changed slightly. Based on the voice, he could determine how strong the person was, and this was someone he couldn't afford to fight against. Tianxiong Lai, I presume that's someone else from the Tianxiong clan. Jian Chen thought to himself secretly. Increasing his speed, Jian Chen began to run even faster. The merchants and mercenaries that had heard the angry roar of Tianxiong Lai looked stunned. Tianxiong Lai, isn't that the current leader of the #1 clan in Wake City? To offend a member of the Tianxiong clan and then be chased by them, means that they must be a strong person then. Forget it, I've only just reached the great saint level, it's best not to get involved. The Tianxiong clan is the strongest within the city, if I were to help stop this person, then Tianxiong Lai would definitely reward me handsomely. Perhaps I can even become a friend of the Tianxiong clan. Something like this would be very fortuitous for me. A few of the mercenaries who were familiar with the power structure in Wake City began to talk about the status of Tianxiong Lai. As they talked to each other, a few of the stronger men had started to weigh the benefits of helping out. It was obvious that Tianxiong Lai had quite an amount of prestige in Wake City. The moment he spoke out, many mercenaries had immediately been influenced. Seeing Jian Chen come running toward them, many of the mercenaries had already brought out their saint weapons and walked out to block Jian Chen's path. The moment one mercenary walked forward, all the other mercenaries followed suit, and helped to block Jian Chen's path. These men were clearly enticed by the irresistible reward put up by Tianxiong Lai. After all, the Tianxiong clan was as powerful in reality as they were in name. Seeing the group of people up ahead, Jian Chen's face immediately hardened. But since he was going so fast, he was already right next to them in the span less than 5 seconds. Just as Jian Chen was about to make contact, the mercenaries brought their saint weapons out too as they charged at him. Not wanting to get entangled with them, Jian Chen leapt into the air to dodge the incoming group. Landing on top of the roof of a store, he disappeared over the heads over the crowd. Where do you think you're escaping to? Immediately a group of experts with faster reaction times flew up with him, and slashed at Jian Chen with their saint weapons. A severe amount of killing intent flashed from Jian Chen as the silver-colored light wind sword appeared out of nowhere. With a swish of his hand, it quickly flew at his pursuers. Ding 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 ding. The sounds of saint weapons clashing against each other rang throughout the air as blood began to sprinkle down below. The few amount of mercenaries that had chased after Jianchen were like broken kites that had backed down to the ground uselessly. After dropping them to the ground and silently struggling by hearse. There was no movement from them. Instead, a trickle of blood flowed from their throats and chests to the ground below them. Chapter 136, Pursuit of the Tianxiong clan. While Jianchen was in midair, he had quickly killed the mercenaries who were chasing him. This sudden show of strength had surprised everyone. They hadn't thought that Jianchen would be able to kill the mercenaries. With this new development, many of the mercenaries decided against their original plan to block Jianchen. Although many people were seduced by Tianxiong Lai's promise of a heavy reward, one needed to be alive to claim it. If they were to throw away their lives, they would not be able to enjoy it even if they earned the reward. After killing the mercenaries blocking his path, Jianchen continued onward. Jumping down from the buildings, he ran off to get closer to the city gates. After seeing what had just happened, there was no longer any mercenary that dared to obstruct him. So for a good amount of time, Jianchen's journey to the city gates was very smooth. You won't get away. Even if you run to the ends of the earth itself, I, Tianxiong Lai, swear to break your body into 1,000 pieces. An angry roar came from the Tianxiong clan leader riding on his magical beast mount from behind Jianchen. They were currently chasing after Jianchen at top speeds, and it wasn't hard to tell from the noise just how powerful Tianxiong Lai's determination to kill Jianchen was. Jianchen's killing of Tianxiong Kong was tantamount to killing Tianxiong Lai's whole family. After all, Tianxiong Kong was his sole son, and with Tianxiong Lai's body being in such a state, he had lost the ability to reproduce. Jianchen turned a deaf ear from Tianxiong Lai's murderous roars. The only thing he wanted to do was to quickly escape from the huge city. The sounds of the footsteps from behind were getting louder and louder as Jianchen realized that they belonged to a magical beast much faster than his own speed. 5 kilometers, 4 kilometers, 3 kilometers. Jianchen was rapidly approaching the city gates. There was only 2 kilometers left until he reached them. He could already see the giant gates leading outside of the city, but right behind was Tianxiong Lai, who was riding his magical beast only 1 kilometer behind him. Commander Haddo, if you can close this gate and help stop this person, then I, Tianxiong Lai, won't be able to thank you enough. Tianxiong Lai's voice came out like powerful thunder from behind him. Quickly, the city gates to Wake City began to close. Seeing the city gates close, Jianchen's face immediately fell. His eyes swept toward the gates 40 meters away as he let out a deep breath of air. The saint force within his body began to circulate within his body, increasing his speed by some degree. At the same time, Jianchen was employing the techniques he had learned from his past life. Both of his legs ran at such a fast speed that his feet looked as if they were gliding across the ground. For every 10 or 20 meters that he glided, his legs touched the ground once. In a flash, Jianchen arrived at the foot of the city gates. Already, there was a large group of mercenaries congregating by the rapidly closing gates awaiting Jianchen. Quite a few of them were cursing Jianchen. Jianchen didn't bother to slow down at the sight of this. Instead, his legs disappeared in a blur as he ran another 30 meters before leaping at the city gates in preparation to climb it. Finally gathering his strength, Jianchen's legs stamped onto the ground and began to scale the wall. The moment Jianchen had started to climb the wall, the people below had immediately taken notice and began to chatter non-stop. In 2 breaths' time, Jianchen had smoothly climbed up the 40-meter tall city wall. Both of his legs stepped off of the wall without a hitch, and he flew over the heads of one of the guards on top of the wall before descending down the other side. It was going well for Jianchen. On his way down the city wall, he met no obstructions. Even as he flew over the heads of the guards on top of the wall, they could only look at him with wide eyes. As Jianchen climbed the city walls, Tianxiong Lai, who was right behind, immediately jumped up onto the wall without his magical beast and started to scale it in the same manner as Jianchen had. However, not only was the magical beast very heavy, it was not an expert in climbing, so it remained on the ground as Tianxiong Lai stopped in his tracks, but didn't admit his violations, nor was he willing to go with the officials. After that, another group of 10 middle-aged men rushing over and looked at the city walls before climbing up the wall and running in the same direction as Jianchen. These people were the Saint Masters of the Tianxiong clan. Open the gates. Just as these people flew out from the city, a deep sound came out from behind the gates. Soon after, the closed gates began to slowly creak open. On the wall stood 2 middle-aged men. One of them wore a long white robe, while the other wore black armor. At that moment, the 2 middle-aged men were looking at the group of people currently walking into the distance outside of the city at rapid speeds. When Jian Chen's group disappeared from their lines of sight, the middle-aged man wearing armor looked at the white-robed man next to him and asked, "Commander Haddo, why didn't you hold him back?" The white-robed middle-aged man smiled and said, "He killed Tianxiong Lai's sole son, Tianxiong Kong, and I haven't even had the chance to thank him yet. Why would I stop him?" The armored man paused for a bit, and seemed to have thought of something. He broke into a smile that made it seem like he was taking joy in another's misfortune. Outside the city, the feverish Jian Chen looked back at Tianxiong Lai, who was pursuing him from behind. His face grew heavy as he saw Tianxiong Lai. Although Jian Chen hadn't fought with him yet, he knew that Tianxiong Lai was not an equal opponent. Looking at the area behind him, Jian Chen began to think for a while before biting his lips in frustration and then turned to run toward the direction of the magical beast mountain range. He knew that in this wide open space, there would be no way for him to shake off the determined Tianxiong Lai. The only method for him was to run toward the magical beast mountain range. From there, he would be able to use the complicated forest and terrain to his advantage to escape from him. Seeing the gap between him and Jian Chen shrink further and further, Tianxiong Lai's eyes immediately turned red. He didn't conceal his powerful murderous aura at all as he roared in anger, "You can't run away from me." Jian Chen turned back to survey his surroundings. There was only about a 500 m difference between him and Tianxiong Lai. Based on this situation, Tianxiong Lai would most likely catch up with him before he reached Magical Beast Mountain Range. Jian Chen hesitated for a bit before clenching his teeth. The light wind sword suddenly materialized in his right hand. The next moment, Jian Chen's figure, which was rushing forward, suddenly stopped. He then spontaneously charged toward Tianxiong Lai. "Great Saint Master, I want to witness exactly how strong you are." Chapter 137, Battling a Great Saint Master. Seeing that Jian Chen was no longer running, and was even voluntarily rushing toward him, Tianxiong Lai couldn't help but give a fierce-looking smile as he roared, "Yes, come. I'm going to dismember your body into thousands of pieces. No, dying would be letting you off too lightly. I will definitely make you live in a hell to the point where you'd rather die." As he said this, a wide axe suddenly appeared in Tianxiong Lai's hand. This axe was extremely large, over double the size of Tianxiong Lai's tall and sturdy body. The entire axe had the color and luster of yellow earth, and its sharp edge flashed with a cold, threatening glow. The light wind sword in Jian Chen's hand slashed through air, making a faint, air-splitting sound as it was thrust toward Tianxiong Lai. "Ha!" Tianxiong Lai let out an explosive shout, and the axe in his hand suddenly flashed with a yellow glow. It then swung down toward Jian Chen with a shrill ear-piercing shriek. "To think that it's an earth-attributed saint force." Seeing the yellow glow on the axe, Jian Chen's heavy expression couldn't help but sink even further. He then immediately retracted his light wind sword to dodge Tianxiong Lai's attack. With a flash, he appeared next to Tianxiong Lai's side, and the light wind sword pierced toward his waist. Tianxiong Lai sneered. He suddenly let go of one of the hands gripping the axe, and his palm quickly became surrounded by a layer of yellow light. Just like that, it began to rush to grab Jian Chen's light wind sword. The light wind sword was tightly caught by Tianxiong Lai's right hand, and the sharp sword blade unexpectedly didn't harm him at all. There was a trace of shock reflected in Jian Chen's eyes. Although he had long since heard about the profound talent that those with the earth attribute possessed, their extremely powerful defense, but he hadn't realized it'd be to such an extent. Afterward, Jian Chen's eyes fiercely flashed. In the next moment, the light wind sword currently being tightly grasped by Tianxiong Lai's right hand suddenly emitted powerful sword qi. Under this strong attack, the yellow layer of light around Tianxiong Lai's right hand quickly turned lighter, indicating that it was faintly dissipating. Tianxiong Lai quickly released the light wind sword. The moment his hand left the blade, the yellow glow surrounding his hand also disappeared. A yellow cross-shaped wound could be seen on Tianxiong Lai's hand, and fresh blood quickly covered his entire palm, dyeing it crimson. His eyes never once wavered from Jian Chen, who stood right in front of him. Tianxiong Lai gave an angry growl as he continued to focus on Jian Chen before demanding, "Speak, why did you kill my Kong heir? Who was it that hired you to do it?" Seeing how there was a good 10 feet distance from Tianxiong Lai, Jian Chen lowered his sword a fraction and spoke coldly, "No one told me to do anything, it was your son that provoked me first. If you want to blame anyone, then blame yourself for teaching a child to not know anything besides bragging and causing trouble wherever he goes." Tianxiong Lai's glare froze over at Jian Chen before asking once more, "Was there really no person that told you to kill my son? You need not be afraid of being someone's scapegoat. If you tell me right now, then I'll let you die a quick death. I've already told you. It's up to yourself if you want to believe it or not." Jian Chen replied. Seeing how there was no hint of a lie in Jian Chen's words, Tianxiong Lai couldn't help but believe him. Opening his mouth, he said, "So it seems that it was my fault, I was too lenient on Kong heir, and so Kong heir is dead because of me." As he spoke, Jian Chen could hear the sorrow and regret in Tianxiong Lai's voice. At this moment, a decent distance away, a group of 10 people were approaching rapidly. Seeing the group of people behind Tianxiong Lai, Jian Chen mood couldn't help but change for the worse. If he couldn't defend himself against someone like Tianxiong Lai, then with another 10 Saint Masters added into the mix, Jian Chen would definitely die here today. While reabsorbing his light wind sword back into his body, Jian Chen's feet immediately stamped against the ground, causing a clump of dirt to fly up. Concentrating the Saint force in his body in his hands, he slapped the dirt forward. Immediately, the clump of dirt became a huge dust cloud that flew toward Tianxiong Lai and blocked his vision. Gaining this new opportunity, Jian Chen didn't hesitate. His figure immediately became a blur as he headed toward the magical Beast Mountain range. Because of the dust cloud, Tianxiong Lai's vision was heavily impacted and could not see around himself at all. In order to avoid a surprise attack by Jian Chen, he immediately leapt backward from the dust cloud area. Although, the moment he saw Jian Chen had instead chosen to run away, he exploded with anger, "You can't escape." Before he had even finished talking, he started to chase after Jian Chen. However, because of this delay, the head start Jian Chen had gave him a few hundred meters of distance. In this current situation, Jian Chen was unable to heal himself using the Light Saint Force. What he needed the most was to run away at full speed to the magical Beast Mountain range to avoid Tianxiong Lai's wrath. Wake City was only 20 kilometers away from the magical Beast Mountain range. With Jian Chen running as if his life depended on it, he was already close to the magical Beast Mountain range. Arriving at the forest, which was by the outskirts of the mountain, he came across a dense part of the forest. Tianxiong Lai, who was still chasing him from behind, could already guess what Jian Chen was planning to do. With some hesitation, he brought out his giant axe that gleamed in the light in his hands. Tianxiong Lai held his axe above his head before letting out an explosive shout and swinging downward. Then a 2-meter-long Earth attribute Saint Force-colored crescent moon came flying toward Jian Chen. Sensing a large amount of energy fluctuating behind him, Jian Chen didn't bother to look around and instead ran to the side in an attempt to dodge. The crescent moon-like force of energy had moved past Jian Chen's back. This time, Jian Chen's good luck had saved him once more. Bang! The Earth Saint Force exploded against a huge rock, letting out a loud sound as a result and scattering the energy in all 4 directions. The stone, which was previously the height of 2 people and 3 meters wide, exploded into multiple fragments that flew everywhere. Several of the fragments that flew from the stone hit Jian Chen. Jian Chen had tried his best to avoid every single stone fragment that flew at him, but with the sheer amount of them, enough to cover the sky, there were already some sharp rocks that had made it past his defenses. With this unfortunate accident, Jian Chen's movement was definitely hindered. "Kid, accept your death." A loud roar came from behind. It was Tianxiong Lai with his axe up high and a large amount of Saint Force ready to be used. Chapter 138, A Chance to Kill from the Forest. In a flash, the light wind sword appeared in Jian Chen's hand. In the next moment, an overwhelming amount of sword chi began to flow around the sword, causing it to look hazy to everyone. Separating itself from Jian Chen's hand, it became a streak of silver light as it flew toward Tianxiong Lai's axe at unbelievable speeds. Ding! The light wind sword and the axe collided against each other, creating a sound of metal hitting metal. After the attack, the strong amount of sword chi on the light wind sword and the earth saint force on the axe began to dim with each push against each other. A large shockwave had then resulted, spreading out with the two weapons acting as the epicenter, pushing Jian Chen backward just by the force. The light wind sword was blasted backward before slowly floating to a halt. Stopping 10 meters away from where it used to be, it began to shake violently before another wave of sword chi enveloped the sword and shot forward once more. Whoosh! At this moment, the light wind sword was like it possessed a mind of its own. With a shrill sound as it traveled through the air, it flew toward Tianxiong Lai without any further delay. Seeing the light wind sword come at his throat, Tianxiong Lai immediately tilted his neck out of the way. Despite the light wind sword barely missing his neck, the sword chi on the sword had left behind a small trace of a wound on his neck. Jian Chen cried out in pity inwardly, to think that he had such a good opportunity and Tianxiong Lai had unexpectedly dodged it. He wasn't discouraged. Using his spirit to control the light wind sword, he commanded it to fly at Tianxiong Lai once more. Seeing how the light wind sword was flying by itself in midair, Tianxiong Lai couldn't but cry out in shock at this inconceivable event. What kind of trick is this, a saint weapon that is being controlled by no one? How can it fly by itself with such a speed? Tianxiong Lai questioned to himself in amazement. No matter how much he looked at it, he wasn't able to understand it. This was something out his range of knowledge. Once more, under the control of Jian Chen, the light wind sword flashed toward Tianxiong Lai. Tianxiong Lai shouted loudly as his earth saint force began to emanate from his body before condensing over his body like a type of armor. Raising his saint weapon into the air, he sent it flying down toward the light wind sword. At Jian Chen's will, the light wind sword avoided Tianxiong Lai's attack by moving to the side. Because Jian Chen's strength was far too different from Tianxiong Lai's, even if the soul sword increased his attack power several times over, it was still not enough to take on a hit from Tianxiong Lai. Meanwhile, Tianxiong Lai's earth saint weapon crashed into the ground. Bang! Came the sound as the axe ejected all of the nearby dirt, creating a crater. The light wind sword flew around in a circle before reorienting itself and flying at Tianxiong Lai once more. Before Tianxiong Lai could even react, the sharp point of the sword had stabbed into his sturdy body. The incredibly sharp sword chi collided against the incredibly sturdy body of Tianxiong Lai. As the two forces grinded against each other, Tianxiong Lai's durable body couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The light wind sword bore a hole in his armor and stabbed through into his body. However, just as the light wind sword was about to stab into his skin, the inner saint force within Tianxiong Lai's body blocked it. The great Saint Master's saint force then began to force it out of his body. Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together as he thought about how difficult Tianxiong Lai was. He didn't think that with such a good opportunity, he still wasn't able to kill him. It would appear that even with the assistance of the soul sword, he was only able to hinder Tianxiong Lai for a moment. Even with good luck, he wouldn't be able to do serious harm, and if he wanted to kill him, it would be easier to scale the heavens. With the soul sword taking up a lot of his spirit, Jian Chen wouldn't be able to last for much longer. Thinking to himself, Jian Chen quickly came to a decision. In a split second, the light wind sword flew back to his hand before disappearing from view. Without further hesitation, Jian Chen began to run toward the magical beast mountain range. The most important matter was that he needed to run away. Because of Tianxiong Lai's strength, defending himself was a difficult task. Right now it was impossible to kill him, it would be for the best to wait until he was stronger and then come back to resolve the issue. Tianxiong stared gloomily at Jian Chen escaping as the Earth Saint force surrounding him was slowly absorbed back into his body. On his back was a small wound that was slowly dyeing a part of his clothes red. Clan leader. My lord. At that moment, 10 mercenaries came into view behind Tianxiong and stared with shock at the wound on Tianxiong back. Chase him, you cannot let him escape. Tianxiong shouted before leading the mercenaries forward. Jian Chen had already entered the thick part of the forest in a mad dash. However, his current speed was a lot slower than his original speed. Just breathing was a laborious task now and his face was rapidly paling. With each and every step he took he could feel the various wounds inflicted on him, tormenting his nerves. There was no time for him to find a place to treat his wounds, so he could only focus on running instead of using the light saint force to heal himself. Stopping under a big tree to catch his breath, he turned his head around only to see Tianxiong chasing from behind. Regaining his bearings, Jian Chen once more began to run toward the magical beast mountain range. On the road, Jian Chen had used the trees and tall grass to hide his figure in order to throw off his trackers. In the forest it was a lot easier to hide. The trees and tall grass would throw off any pursuers with ease. Unknown to the both of them, the chase had taken over half the day, meaning it was noon once more. The scorching hot sun was blocked by the cloudy skies, making the area around him look murky and dark. While Tianxiong and his group of mercenaries were trying to track Jian Chen's footprints through the magical beast mountain range, in the end, they had finally lost him. Tianxiong stared angrily at the tall grass around him with a dreadful expression. Immediately taking out a piece of paper from his robes, he said, "Xing Dao, take this warrant back immediately and organize for a group to search the mountain range." "Yes, my lord." One of the males took the warrant from Tianxiong hand and disappeared from the forest. Chapter 139, Stealth Kill. After the mercenary with the warrant left, Tianxiong waved his hand at the others, searched the surrounding area carefully for any traces. "I want to know where he ran off to." After losing track of Jian Chen, Tianxiong and his group of mercenaries could only hope to look for traces left behind by him, but this was a task that was significantly hard. In a dense part of the forest in the magical beast mountain range, Jian Chen sat down under a big tree with a pale face. Carefully using his light wind sword to pick out the pieces of stone fragments in his body, his clothes were beginning to be dyed completely red. Each time the tip of the light wind sword stabbed into his flesh, a new wave of pain pelted through Jian Chen. The constant source of pain had tested Jian Chen's nerves, and his forehead was soaked with sweat with each additional moment. When the final stone fragment had been extracted from his body, Jian Chen finally let loose a relieved grunt. Without energy, he slumped against the wide tree trunk and calmly took in deep breaths of air. After resting for a while, Jian Chen concentrated his senses on his surroundings only to discover that it was peaceful once more. Sitting in a cross-legged position, a ball of white light slowly came into view and enveloped Jian Chen in it. It continued to heal Jian Chen's body for a few moments before turning into a ball of milky white light. By this point, Jian Chen's body was completely submerged. From the outside, you could only see a blurry outline of his body. For an hour, Jian Chen continued to stay submerged in that milky glow of white light before it started to gradually dissipate. Not too long afterward, his body could be clearly seen within it. This time, Jian Chen's face no longer had that pale look on it, instead his regular healthy glow was back. The various wounds that used to adorn his body were now completely gone without a single scar left on his body. However, Jian Chen didn't wake out of his stupor just yet. He continued to recollect the lost saint force he has used up in his escape. The amount he had used was not small, and the saint force within his body had almost been completely depleted. Because of the fact that he was not only in the magical beast mountain range where magical beasts could find him, but Tianxiong's men would be searching the area. So all Jian Chen could do was to try and maintain his body's optimal condition in order to be able to confront any dangers he might come across. Not aware of how much time had elapsed, Jian Chen's body had actually sat in the same position for 6 hours, constantly refilling his saint force. Not at any single point in time did his body move, neither did his eyes ever blink open. It was almost like he was a monk that had entered a deep meditation state and had completely lost awareness of the material world around him. At that moment, from behind a tree, a slender python came slithering out noiselessly toward Tianxiong. Coiling around the tree, it paused, before it slowly glided toward him again, and not too long after, it began to stretch its small jaws open. Just as the snake was less than a foot away from him, the cross-legged Tianxiong suddenly opened his eyes. A cold glint appeared in his eyes as the light wind sword appeared in the palm of his right hand and stabbed at the python with an extremely quick speed. PCH. The light wind sword accurately pierced into the area where the heart was located. With such a large amount of sword chi, the python's heart was instantly ruptured. Not even looking at the python, he reclaimed the light wind sword into his body and continued to sit down next to the tree. Closing his eyes, he continued to try to recover his spirit. While it looked like he was in a deep meditative state like a monk, in actuality, he was keeping close track of his environment. In an area where magical beasts roamed about, he didn't dare be careless as he tried to recover his saint force. The 4 or 5 foot long python fell from the tree trunk now that it was powerless to stay coiled around it. As it dropped, it released a deep hissing sound before struggling on the ground for a moment before going still. After another 4 hours, Tianxiong opened his eyes once more and stood up on the tree branch. He took out another set of clothes from within his space belt and changed into them. Noticing that it was now dark, he began to think for a while before deciding on leaving the area. Tianxiong carefully looked around himself in case the Tianxiong clan was nearby. At this moment he had fully recovered from his wounds, and even his saint force was back to optimal conditions. Now that he was in the magical beast mountain range with its complicated terrain, Tianxiong was confident that if he were to come across Tianxiong Lai again, he would be able to easily retreat, unlike the fight before where it had occurred in open space. Just then, a small rustling sound came from behind. The moment he heard that sound, Tianxiong's heart stopped. He quickly leaped up onto a nearby tree branch that was hidden from view thanks to the leaves. Not too long after, a group of men wearing white slowly came into view. This type of lifestyle is exhausting. Having a group of us head into the magical beast mountain range in order to find just one person without even a single portrait. How are we supposed to look then? One of the white-robed mercenaries complained to the others. That's right, we don't even know what this person looks like. Even if we were to come across him, how would we even recognize him? A bearded middle-aged man said. My fellow brothers, do you know exactly why the clan leader wanted us to look for this man so badly? A person said curiously. I've heard that Tianxiong Kong was killed by this man. Tianxiong Kong is the sole heir to our Tianxiong clan. You tell me, if your son was killed, wouldn't you be furious? Then of course the clan leader would definitely want to catch this murderer. I've heard the Tianxiong clan has already sent 300 of its members into the magical beast mountain range. Among all those people, the weakest members are great saints while there's around 30 saint masters. With the clan leader dispatching that many people into the mountain range, do you think we'll be able to catch the murderer? After all, the magical beast mountain range is huge, and it's hard to say if that man has already escaped from here or not. That can't be said for sure, but according to the news, the murderer had already been heavily injured by the clan leader. In this giant forest, even if he were to escape, he wouldn't get far. The group of mercenaries began to idly talk as if they were taking a stroll instead of hunting someone. Just as these mercenaries walked under the huge tree, the leaves above suddenly swayed as a person darted out with his light wind sword ready to stab into the group below. PCH. Just as these mercenaries tilted their heads up, the sword had already stabbed in between a man's eyebrows. Everyone be careful, someone's attacking. Someone was fast to respond, but before he could even finish his sentence, the light wind sword blurred momentarily before stabbing into his throat. Chapter 140. The Tianxiong clan's retreat. By that point, the rest of the mercenaries finally overcame their surprise and took out their saint weapons to fight. The sword-wielding swordsman turned himself over in the air and dodged the incoming strikes before gracefully landing on the ground. The sword chi radiating from his sword slowly covered the air around it. It soon also enshrouded the mercenaries within it as well. By the time the sword chi had dissipated, the Tianxiong clan members had all fallen to the ground with a hole in their throats. A trickle of blood leaked from their wounds out onto the earth below. Taking back his sword, Jian Chen calmly looked at the grounded members before saying, "You've given me quite the useful amount of information. 30 Saint Masters and over 200 great saints, the Tianxiong clan really isn't weak at all. To think that they would send that many people into the magical beast mountain range to find me. It's no wonder they are the #1 clan in Wake City." Jian Chen became silent for a moment before his face slowly started to turn into a smile. "So if you aren't going to let me go, then don't blame me for being fierce. I'll play around with you then." In the blink of an eye, several days had passed, and in the span of those days, Jian Chen had roamed around the place and focused on dealing with the men from the Tianxiong clan. Although Jian Chen normally wasn't one for revenge, he also wasn't one to not fight back. After being provoked and bullied to such a state by the Tianxiong clan, if he didn't make a move, then he wouldn't be able to call himself Jian Chen. Already the amount of people killed by Jian Chen had reached somewhere in the 200 range. Among those, there were 10 Saint Master experts, the rest were all great saints. With a disastrous loss like this, even for the Tianxiong clan, it would be hard to recover from since they had been damaged down to their roots. The Tianxiong clan actually knew this well and clear, but they had taken no steps to remedy it. On the contrary, they had instead taken more members from their clan and had them search the magical beast mountain range in search of Jian Chen's footsteps. Tianxiong Lai definitely wanted to take revenge for his deceased son no matter how heavy a price he would have to pay. The events that had transpired for the past few days had been known to everyone in Wake City. The Tianxiong clan had been the main ruling power for over 10 years, so Tianxiong Lai's reputation could even be said to be very clear. The permanent residential mercenaries and merchants all knew who Tianxiong Lai was and how strong he was. The news that the heir of the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong Kong, was killed and that Tianxiong Lai had brought a group of ferocious-looking mercenaries into the magical beast mountain range to find the assassin had caused a huge commotion in Wake City. This topic was spoken by mercenaries and merchants alike over a cup of tea and a plate of food. However, whoever was so audacious to kill Tianxiong Kong, no one knew who that person was. The only thing they had known about this mysterious assassin was that he was an extremely young person, every other detail was unknown. The other clans in Wake City had secretly observed the affairs of the Tianxiong clan. When they realized just how much damage the Tianxiong clan had taken while in the magical beast mountain range, each one of them had begun to prepare their clan to take over and divide up the shares of the Tianxiong clan in the market. The Tianxiong clan had controlled a large part of Wake City, causing every other clan to be incredibly jealous, but some of them had feared the power of the Tianxiong clan, so they had stayed patient. However, now that the Tianxiong clan had come across such an unexpected accident, their power was no longer the same. Many of the clans couldn't let this opportunity pass by them anymore, and began to stretch out with their hands for the Tianxiong clan's profits. In the magical beast mountain range, a group of 20 to 40-year-old worried mercenaries sat in a circle around each other. "Clan leader, the situation isn't looking too good here. That brat is as treacherous as a devil and has also gained many experiences about how to hunt in a forest. We are at a disadvantage since he holds an advantage with the terrain and has already shaken us off his trail multiple times. Not only that, but this brat is also very strong. Many of the smaller groups didn't have the strength to kill him at all and eventually were destroyed. Even if his opponent is an expert of the Saint Master, he has been able to go against them all the same. So far the amount of people we brought into the magical beast mountain range has been reduced down to half, but I'm afraid that if things continue on like this, the amount of people we will have left would be countable on our hands." A middle-aged man said with concern. "That's right, clan leader, that brat is far too cunning. If we group together, he takes on an ambush approach in a way that we don't get to see his face, and the moment we split up, he comes after us one by one. Not only that, but he is as nimble as a monkey in these forests, so we're unable to chase after him. What can we do about that? In our group right now, only my lord would be able to go up against this brat." Another mercenary said with the same amount of worry. Clan leader, right now we are at a disadvantage, it would be best to retreat for now and think things over. A frail-looking person said. Clan leader, right now since we have lost so many members in the magical beast mountain ranges, our development in Wake City will be halted. We cannot let that happen. Tianxiong clenched his fist in frustration as his face revealed a hesitant expression. In his heart a fierce struggle was being played. After some time, Tianxiong bit his lips and spoke out, tell everyone to retreat. Yes, clan leader. Upon hearing this order, each and every mercenary revealed a happy expression as their hearts secretly let loose a breath of air in relief. After facing Jianchen these past few days, not a single one of them wanted to throw away their lives. It was with good fortune that Tianxiong had been accompanying them. In their eyes, they were deeply afraid of coming across Jianchen without him. A person grabbed onto a bamboo shoot before setting the fuse on fire. With a shrill whistle, the bamboo shoot flew straight up into the air before exploding with a loud bang and transformed into a scarlet fog of smoke that scattered everywhere. Within the depths of the magical beast mountain range, there was a group of mercenaries that sat around in a circle and ate some pieces of meat. When this assassin will be captured, I don't know. The amount of casualties our Tianxiong clan has accumulated has already reached over a large amount, 10 Saint Masters have already died. To be able to kill Saint Masters with ease, with us having only the strength of a great saint, I don't know how long it'll be before we become a target for him. As long as we don't come across him, we'll be fine. Otherwise, we won't have a life to return home with. The mercenaries sat around the fire and chattered among themselves with worry. At that moment, a loud shrill sound spiraled into the sky. Hearing that, every single mercenary looked up past the tree canopy to see the blossoming fireworks in the sky, leading to a few mercenaries crying out in relief. That's our Tianxiong clan's retreat signal. One of the mercenaries cried out in joy. We can finally return home. What's everyone doing just standing around? Let's hurry up and go home. Did you guys want to stay around here or something? That assassin could come at any time and slaughter us like livestock. Right, let's hurry up and go. This isn't a place we should stick around. After that, no one was in the mood to eat their food and immediately left the place. Not too long after they left, a shadow dropped down from the trees. This figure was wearing the leather of a magical beast, and already there was the beginning signs of a beard growing on his face. Seeing the group of mercenaries fade out from sight, the figure revealed a sneer. So you want to retreat? That's fine, but just this last time, I hope you let loose one final stream of blood. Whoever offends Jianchen, will not be able to leave so easily. Chapter 141, Where is he? Now that the Tianxiong clan had renounced their search for Jianchen, they all immediately started to retreat from the magical beast mountain range. At the sight of the firework, they all started to move out quickly. However, Jianchen didn't plan on letting the Tianxiong clan off that easily. Although, there wasn't much he could do against Tianxiong, against those great saints and saint masters, he could easily make do with them. Although the magical beast mountain range usually made it difficult to find other mercenaries, the Tianxiong clan mercenaries were all wearing white and had the Tianxiong emblem on their robes, so finding them was an easy task. Occasionally, the sounds of battle could be heard in the mountain range. Even as the Tianxiong clan members retreated, many groups still came across Jianchen and were killed. He had accumulated months of rich experience after living in the magical beast mountain range and could appear and disappear like a ghost with the help of the complicated terrain. His surprise attacks caused his enemies to be unable to defend themselves. Even the times when Jianchen was discovered by mercenaries, Jianchen still surprised and killed them in the end with a single strike. Even if Jianchen was encircled by the experts of the Tianxiong clan, he could rely on his superior speed to escape into the forest without a trace. This had pained the Tianxiong clan greatly since none of them could chase him. Even the middle Saint Masters were unable to come up with a way to chase him. In half a day, all of the Tianxiong clan had finally gathered together. Seeing that only 100 people remained, Tianxiong was very depressed. In the beginning, they had entered the magical Beast Mountain range with 1,000 mercenaries. He didn't think that in just a few days' time, they would lose over 400 members. To the Tianxiong clan, this was a serious loss. A serious glint of murderous intent radiated from Tianxiong Lai for a split second as his desire to kill Jian Chen had reached unprecedented levels. Not only did he kill his Kang heir, but he had even caused a tremendous amounts of damage to the Tianxiong clan. Right now Tianxiong Lai wanted to do nothing more than devour Jian Chen's flesh and drink his blood. Seeing the gloomy face on Tianxiong Lai, every mercenary in the vicinity felt a tightness in their throats. No one dared to say a word in case they invoked the wrath of Tianxiong Lai. At this moment, no one dared to say anything that could possibly offend him. "Let's go." Tianxiong Lai waved his hand with a gloomy face. As he led them away from the area, he knew that after experiencing such a loss, it would be very hard to say that the Tianxiong clan was still the #1 clan in Wake City. The remaining Tianxiong mercenaries walked through the forest without any magical beasts daring to attack them. However, an air of depression emanated from this group. They were clearly listless, and their spirits were low. Behind them was a leather-wearing figure that was closely following them nimbly through the trees. He moved in a way that the nearby tall grass barely moved at all, and even though he was no more than 50 meters away from the Tianxiong group, the Tianxiong clan members did not notice him and continued to walk onward. Because of the loud sounds they were making, they were unable to hear the even more minute sounds that their follower was creating. The person behind them was very cautious, using the tall grass to conceal his movements. He quickly followed close by. In a few seconds, he was within 20 meters without being noticed yet. At that moment, the bright and shiny glint of a sword appeared in the man's hands. Still hidden by the grass, the man disappeared into a blur and flew behind the backmost mercenary of the Tianxiong clan. Crossing over the 20 meters dividing him and the group of mercenaries, the man's sword glinted as it swished through the air and stabbed at the very last person in the group. The sword flashed several times as it moved at inconceivable speeds, stabbing through the necks of 5 mercenaries. Without stopping there, his silver sword became a blur once more as he stabbed at the throats of another 3 people in a split second. "Everyone be careful, that man's here." Just as those 8 mercenaries were killed in a lightning-fast speed, one mercenary finally came to the realization that they were under attack and yelled out a warning for everyone. Upon hearing the warning, every mercenary pulled out their saint weapon and stared around themselves. However, just as the first man spoke, the assailant had already retreated back into the foliage just as quickly as he appeared. "Stay still, don't even think about escaping." A roar boomed from behind as Tianxiong Lai leaped forward with his axe in hand. Chasing after the man, the other 20 Saint Masters then followed suit. Seeing Tianxiong Lai and the other Saint Masters chase after the man, the remaining Tianxiong clan members let out a breath of relief. Their previously nervous expressions laxed by a large amount as well. For the past few days, they had been terrorized by this man who had killed many of their strong brothers. It was with good reason that they were afraid of him, wondering just when it would be their turn to be the ones on the ground by his hands. Suddenly, just as they let out a sigh in relief, the tall grass split open as a silver sword flew out from it in a brilliant show of light. PCH. PCH. 2 mercenaries then fell to the ground with their throats stabbed through. This sudden movement had disturbed many men. The moment they saw this, each and every mercenary there had turned pale with fright. "Everyone be careful, he's here." Before the man could finish talking, a leather-wearing man came out from the dense foliage with his sword at the ready to stab into the nearest person. The remaining Tianxiong clan members all held their saint weapons up. Since they held the advantage with numbers, they all started to spread out in a ring to entrap the invading person inside. Even after being encircled, the leather-wearing person didn't have a frantic expression on his face. Holding his sword in his right hand, he continued to defend himself against the attacks that came at him from every direction. His speed was so fast, it caused his attackers to be speechless, but these men were only at the great saint level, so when it was his turn to attack, they saw little to no opportunity to dodge. Following the continuous string of collisions, the leather-wearing man lashed out with his sword, stabbing into the throats of 5 different mercenaries with a hazy glow of sword chi following his sword. After killing those 5 mercenaries, the man didn't continue fighting, instead he opted to run from the encirclement. Entering the foliage, he disappeared without a trace as the remaining mercenaries were powerless to stop him. Not too long after his escape, an Earth-attributed Saint force flew into the area as Tianxiong returned with the other Saint Masters. Looking around the area, all he could see was the corpses on the ground without any signs of their assailant. "Where is he?" Tianxiong roared furiously as he asked the mercenaries there. Chapter 142, Tianxiong clan's heavy losses. He ran out over there. A person pointed to where the man ran off to. Hearing that, Tianxiong turned his glare over to where a mercenary pointed. At this moment, the tall grass was shaking slightly, because someone had only just recently passed through. There remained a clear trace of someone's trail. Tianxiong returned his gaze over to the dead bodies on the floor with a gloomy face. In the brief moment he was gone, another 15 people had died. He was afraid that if things continued on like this, he wouldn't even have 50 people by the time he left the magical beast mountain range. With such heavy losses, there would be no way for the Tianxiong clan to recover from this. The 20 Saint Masters that had followed Tianxiong stood behind him silently. Looking at the dozen dead bodies on the ground, every single one of them had a face that was unprecedentedly serious. "Continue onward," Tianxiong ordered. After these past few days, he knew in his heart that in the complicated terrain of the magical beast mountain range, he was completely unable to kill the youth that killed his son Kong. If things continued on like this, then his army would be utterly destroyed. For now, the current formation will be changed. Every 5 Saint Masters will spread out in one group for each of the 4 directions, and the great saints will be in the middle. Maintain this formation while moving forward. Tianxiong spoke. For a youth that wasn't on his level, to reduce him to such a state was an unwashable disgrace. Soon after, the Tianxiong clan followed Tianxiong change in formation and continued to journey through the mountain range. Now that they had been attacked by surprise once, everyone was extremely vigilant of their surroundings, their eyes constantly swept around their surroundings, wary of suffering from another surprise attack. Tianxiong stood in the center of the formation with his inner saint force constantly on the move inside his body. He just needed for the youth to appear once more. No matter what the position, Tianxiong would be able to respond quickly. Tianxiong eyes swept the area in front of him as his ears trembled as he strained them to listen for any close-by movements. "As long as you appear, even if there is a heavy cost, I will kill you," Tianxiong resolved. The group walked through the dense forest slowly. In regards to this killer after them, they didn't dare to move too quickly in case they made noise that would mask over the minute sounds of their stalker. Just as the Tianxiong clan was about to step over the boundary where the tall grass stopped, the figure of a person darted out from the grass, and in a split second, he had stabbed through the hearts and throats of a few mercenaries. "Don't even think about running away this time." Just as that mysterious figure had stabbed into the throats of a few mercenaries, an angry snarl came from the middle of the formation. Tianxiong gigantic earth-attributed axe flew out at him following the figure's movements. At the same time, the Saint Masters in the group immediately leapt forward with their saint weapons ready to slash at their foe. That man had no desire to fight with everyone. Reclaiming his saint weapon into his body, he darted out of the group and then out of sight into the tall grass once more. "You all stay here, I will chase after him," Tianxiong roared before dashing into the tall grass after the man. This area of grass was tall enough to completely conceal a person within its expanse, and that leather-wearing person was moving through the grass with a nimble and quick speed. Very rarely did he make a sloppy mistake, and he maintained that fast speed without making the tiniest of sounds, as if his body was gliding instead of running. Not a single bit of weight had touched the ground as he ran. It was like he was using the grass for support instead of the ground. "You won't escape this time. If I don't kill you today, then I will never be able to remove this hatred from my heart." Tianxiong chased after the man. His speed had already reached the very pinnacle of his limits as the Earth Saint force flew off like smoke from his legs. With his legs constantly stamping across the ground, he was no slower than the man he was chasing. The leather-wearing man began to constantly change directions, and so too did Tianxiong Lai, who was following closely behind in the tall grass, yet he was unable to keep his eyes on the figure in front. Every so often he would have to jump into the air. At this moment, a fierce gale blew through the tall grass, creating a crashing sound throughout the area and causing Tianxiong Lai, who was chasing after the man, to pale. Stamping off of the ground, he leaped into the air and examined the ground below, only to become dejected. He had lost sight of the man's traces. This damnable wind didn't come early or late, instead, it came right on time, so that I lost sight of that man. Examining his surroundings, Tianxiong Lai had a face full of resentment, and couldn't help but curse out in anger. Afterward, he leaped into the air once more, unwilling to give up. Looking down, he tried to find traces of the man, but he could not because of the gale that was still continuing to blow, causing all of the tall grass to constantly sway in the wind and making tracking impossible. "I definitely won't let you go. If you're a man, then leave behind your name," Tianxiong Lai roared up at the sky. His voice scattered through the air, causing echoes to be heard from far away. Not too long after, a clear laughter could be heard. "Ha ha ha, this one is called Jian Chen. Tianxiong clan, one day I will make another visit, so until that day comes, I hope the clan leader will not worry about me. Jian Chen." Good, good, good. I, Tianxiong Lai, swear that even if you escape to the ends of the earth, I will find you. You won't ever escape, Tianxiong Lai roared. This time, there was no response. Tianxiong Lai couldn't reply anymore, and instead continued to lead the remaining Tianxiong clan members out of the magical beast mountain range. Very quickly they walked away from the grassy areas, and because of that, they no longer came across any surprise attacks. Returning to Wake City, Tianxiong Lai immediately traveled to the Mercenary Union and placed a high bounty on Jian Chen of 10,000 purple coins for the capture of him alive, with his details posted under. Right afterward, the entire Wake City exploded with activity once more. 10,000 purple coins. Such an expensive bounty was a never-before-seen event in Wake City history, and a price this high was rare to see in the entire Tianyuan continent. To add on to that, the Mercenary Union had bumped up the mission grade to a rank, making it a special mission. It wasn't restricted to just mercenaries, as this mission was then sent out to the following nations neighboring the Blue Wind Kingdom. Right at this moment, Jian Chen wasn't aware that the warrant for his capture had been put up with such a high price once more. Right now, he was still in the magical beast mountain range washing his body. My current strength should be around the peak Great Saint tier already. These next few days, I should hunt for a few magical beasts in the mountain range and make a breakthrough into the Saint Master level. This way, if I come across Tianxiong Lai in the future, I won't be considered a weak opponent to him. Jian Chen thought to himself as he quickly made plans for the future. Chapter 143, Tortoise Beast AI. Suddenly, Jian Chen let out a sound of surprise from the water edge. After he had washed away the sweat and filth, he stared at his body, only to discover that his skin had surprisingly turned a deep shade of red, completely unlike his usual skin color. "What's going on here? How did my body turn red?" Jian Chen cried out in astonishment with his eyebrows raised. After thinking about it for some time, his face relaxed and he broke out into a smile. Muttering to himself excitedly, he said, "This is what the book said would happen. This situation means that the anti-venom of the silver-striped golden snake has completely fused with my bloodstream. I didn't think that it would fuse together in only a month's time, nor did I think that the anti-venom of the silver-striped golden snake coursing through my body would make such a change. If my body continues to refine the 1000 immunity, then it will eventually gain the ability to reproduce the anti-venom on its own, and by then, I will have truly perfected the 1000 immunity. Once I perfect the 1000 immunity, all of the blood that my body makes will naturally contain the anti-venom. So I don't need to worry about my body losing any blood with anti-venom anymore." Jian Chen carefully inspected his body just in case there was any other changes to it other than his skin becoming a red color. However, there were no other changes, everything else was exactly the same as before. Jian Chen leapt out of the river to where his crude leather clothes were, and began to change into them. Since he had decided to cultivate in the Magical Beast mountain range until he broke through to Saint Master level, Tianxiong didn't want to switch out of his simple clothing. He hadn't had enough time to buy a new set of spare clothes during his last return to Wake City from the mountain range, since he was unwilling to fill his space belt with countless amounts of clothes that would just be wasted out here. Because of the complicated terrain and all of its thistles and thorns, any clothes worn here would be quickly ruined. Even if he did bring several sets of clothes, he wouldn't want change into them just for that reason. Tianxiong continued on deeper into the mountain range where the Class 3 magical beasts roamed, staying there for a few days. As the next couple of days passed, Tianxiong continued on as usual. In the daytime, he would look for the traces of magical beasts and kill them. At night, he would use the monster cores to cultivate. However, because he hadn't prepared any repellent herbs for mosquitoes and other poisonous insects, every night was a night of torment for him as they harassed Tianxiong. It was a good thing that Tianxiong had the primary step of the 1000 immunity down, so he didn't have to worry about the poisonous bites of the insects. Plus, because he could control Light Saint Force, the remaining swelling or other injuries he did sustain were immediately treated, and disappeared without a trace. During the past few days, Tianxiong had already reached the peak Great Saint level. Adding on to the fact that he had been fighting Class 3 magical beasts every day, his originally exquisite swordplay became even more perfect from this refinement. As his strength grew, the power of his physical body also gradually increased. Although it was still far from reaching invulnerability, it undoubtedly provided him an extremely durable body that could fully utilize his nimble swordplay. After all, if he wanted to increase his speed, the toll on his body would be extremely high. If his body's resilience wasn't enough, a simple fist that used all his strength would most likely cause his arm to throb in pain, as if blood wasn't flowing through it. If he ceaselessly maintained his lightning-fast swordplay, the greatest merit it would provide would be in his cultivation of the profound Azulite sword law, especially for its first layer of techniques, refined body. It would not only help strengthen every cell in Tianxiong's body, it would also make his body softer and yet still possess an exceedingly strong toughness. Under these various conditions, Tianxiong's weaknesses were worked in a way that improved and helped condition Tianxiong's sword strokes to be even harder to dodge. After becoming a great saint, killing Class 3 magical beasts was a great deal easier than before. Nearly 40 magical beasts died from Tianxiong's hands every day. Right now, somewhere in the Magical Beast mountain range, Tianxiong and another gigantic Class 3 magical beast were fighting. The magical beast was the size of several cattle, and its entire body was covered with fine scales as a layer of defense. Tianxiong's body was like a speed demon as he continued to run in circles around the magical beast. The light wind sword in his hand was like a sharp silver ray of light as it continuously struck against the scales of the magical beast. The density and toughness of the scales on the magical beast were extraordinary, so even if Tianxiong really wanted to break through them, he would have a hard time doing so. In addition, the magical beast was humongous. Even if the light wind sword did pierce through the beast's body, the blade would not harm the beast in the slightest, unless fatal. Just as the magical beast started to shake, Tianxiong saw his chance. In a flash of lightning, he stabbed at the throat of the magical beast and pierced straight through it. Unfortunately, after Tianxiong stabbed through its throat, the magical beast still did not die. Letting out a destitute roar, it began to charge at Tianxiong with a ferocity even more intense than before. This tortoise magical beast is at the peak of a Class 3 magical beast level. It is even about to reach the Class 4 magical beast level. No wonder its vitality is this strong. It seems that if I want to take care of this quickly, I will have to take action from within his body. Otherwise, unless I behead it will be very difficult to kill. Tianxiong muttered as he looked at the magical beast in front of him. Not only was the magical beast strong in terms of defense, but its vitality was extraordinary as well. Even after Tianxiong had stabbed into its throat, it still didn't die, rather, the matter had infuriated it further. While Tianxiong and this tortoise magical beast were battling, a group of mercenaries came into the battlefield. There were 20 men in that group with faces so filled with mud, that aside from their ages, no other distinguishing traits were visible. About half of them were wearing leather-skinned clothing while the other half had clothes that were in extremely poor conditions. Two of the mercenaries were even wrapped up completely in bandages. Their blood could easily be seen bleeding underneath the wrappings, signifying that they were heavily wounded. The moment this group of mercenaries saw the tortoise magical beast fight with Jianchen right in front of their eyes, they immediately let out a surprised shout. That seems to be Jianchen. Chapter 144, Black Leopard Mercenaries. Hearing this, the entire group of mercenaries became startled and looked over at Jianchen with careful eyes. A medium-sized build around the age of 20 years old. Wields a slender-sized silver long sword with rapid speeds while being nimble. Captain, this man resembles the one on the bounty posters put up by the Tianxiong clan in the mercenary union. In my opinion, this is definitely Jianchen. A leather hide-wearing mercenary said next to another mercenary whose clothes were still intact. That's right, Captain, I'm absolutely sure this person is Jianchen. The Tianxiong clan has put out a 10,000 purple coin reward for the capture of Jianchen. If we can capture him, then those 10,000 purple coins will be ours. Another shriveled mercenary spoke. Another man spoke out softly, I can see that this Jianchen won't be so easy to handle. Do you guys not see how he is single-handedly fighting against that Class 3 magical beast? What are you afraid of? No matter how awesome he is only one person while we are many. Don't tell me you're afraid of a single person. If word of this spreads out, then our Black Leopard mercenaries will have no face left to preserve in Wake City. Another leather hide-wearing mercenary said with a muffled voice. What he's saying is right. Even if he's amazing, he's still only one person. Could it be that our Black Leopard mercenaries are afraid of a single 20-year-old kid? At that moment, a calm-looking person opened his mouth. Okay, everyone stop arguing. Listen to the captain's opinion. After he had finished speaking, everyone had stopped talking and turned to look at the person who was at the front of the group. Out of everyone in the mercenary group, only he could be considered to have clothes that were in perfect condition. He was the leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries. The leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries was very tall at the height of 2.5 meters and had a sturdy build. The hair on his head was cut to a short length on his large face, but it was rather ordinary to look at, and one would have trouble remembering the details of him if asked. He was wearing black robes that only had a few scratches from the thistle and thorns of the forest. The leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries stared closely at the battle between Jianchen and the tortoise magical beast with a look of hesitancy. After a few moments of unwavering emotions reflected across his eyes, he finally came to a conclusion. No matter how amazing he is, he's still 20 years old after all. He can't be a match for the entire group of ours. Besides, there is only one Class 3 magical beast fighting against him. Let's wait for the beast to consume all of his saint force and deal him some damage before we immediately capture Jianchen and bring him to the Tianxiong clan for that 10,000 purple coin prize. What a marvelous decision, Captain. This matter is over then, our group will definitely flourish. 10,000 purple coins, even after splitting it, this will be enough for our entire lifetime. One person sighed happily. After this is over, I will definitely go to Romance City and have Lady Yunxiu serve me for a few days. Another mercenary laughed. Hee, Jiali, every time that brothel from Romance City is mentioned, you begin to drool. It's a shame you have never had the money to enjoy its pleasures. Wait until this is over, then you will be able to take that Yunxiu back home as your wife without any problems. A man with a beard had laughed. Hearing that, the previous mercenary laughed and then stared at Jianchen almost as if he were staring at a mountain of gold. Ao. At that moment, a blood-curdling roar came from far away. The mercenaries looked at the origin only to see Jianchen had stabbed into the tortoise's throat. There was a strong amount of sword chi that not only stabbed into its throat, but straight into its body with an explosive entrance before impacting against its inner organs. The tortoise continued to shriek as its gigantic body froze up and slowly crashed into the ground with a resounding boom. Forward. Just as the tortoise magical beast fell to the ground, the leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries led his group toward Jian Chen with the rest of the mercenaries following straight behind. The expression on Jian Chen's face didn't change at all. Slowly pulling out his light wind sword from the throat of the tortoise magical beast, he walked to the belly of the beast as if nothing were happening, and with a flash of a large amount of sword chi, he thrusted his sword deep into its stomach. Immediately, a large wound appeared on the belly as Jian Chen stabbed deep within. A blood-stained item then flowed out with the blood before rolling to a stop in front of him. Jian Chen crouched down to the bloody earth and wiped the blood off the item, revealing it to be a small crystal. It was the tortoise's monster core. Seeing how Jian Chen hadn't even spared them a glance as if he held the Black Leopard mercenaries in disdain, the mercenary group suddenly felt gloomy. The leader of the mercenary group looked at Jian Chen and spoke. Jian Chen, I cannot determine your age, but you look very calm, especially in a moment like this where you should feel frantic instead. Jian Chen calmly stored the monster core into his space belt before raising his head up to look at the Black Leopard mercenaries to say calmly, "Who are you? How do you know my name?" Hearing that answer, the Black Leopard mercenaries leader revealed a small cold smile. "We are the Black Leopard mercenaries. As for how we know your name, that's simple. Your name is of well renown in Wake City especially, everyone knows who you are." Jian Chen scowled slightly. "Speak, what is your goal then?" "Our goal is simple, now if you will kindly go with us." Even before Jian Chen could speak, another mercenary had spoke up. "That's right, we only wish for you to come with us. Now be an obedient youngster, and our Black Leopard mercenaries won't treat you too badly." A shriveled mercenary laughed. Jian Chen revealed a cold smile. "This one isn't sure where you want to go." "Where else?" "Of course we go back to Wake City," a man said with a muffled voice. Hearing that city name, Jian Chen immediately guessed that this had to do with the Tianxiong clan. "And if I don't go back with you?" Jian Chen looked at the 20 mercenaries with a calm voice. No matter what angle they looked at him, not a single trace of fear could be seen on it. Hearing this, the members of the Black Leopard mercenaries began to laugh as one of the taller mercenaries took out his saint weapon. It was a 3-meter-long spear. "If you don't come back with us, then we will have to take you in by force. Jian Chen, I presume you wouldn't want to feel any suffering," the captain of the Black Leopard mercenaries said. After hearing their leader, every other mercenary began to take out their own saint weapons, causing the air to fluctuate with the saint force as they stalked toward Jian Chen. Chapter 145. Yet another prophet. Jian Chen, I'll give you one last chance. Come with us obediently and quietly, or we'll take you in by force. If you make us show our hand, then a beating will be hard to avoid. The leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries gave a level stare at Jian Chen, who didn't say a single word. Jian Chen then chuckled and revealed a smile full of disdain as he spoke. "With only your peak Saint Master strength, you don't have the qualifications to speak of such things to me. Today, we shall see if you will be able to capture me, or if each and every single one of you will die by my hand, one by one." As he spoke, a hazy glow of sword chi began to circulate around his light wind sword. Immediately afterward, Jian Chen's figure blurred as he moved toward the mercenary group. In an instant, he reappeared right in front of the weakest-looking mercenary, and swung his sword with a stunning speed. "You're looking for death. Brat, you're too arrogant." Just as Jian Chen began to move, the other members of the Black Leopard mercenaries all cried out in anger as they charged at him. PCH. 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 The instant they took one step forward, Jian Chen stabbed into the throats of 3 mercenaries with lightning-quick speed. Since Jian Chen's attack was so sudden, those of the primary Great Saint level didn't have any time to react at all. Thus, the light wind sword pierced into their throats and ended their lives. Without any hesitation, Jian Chen pulled out his sword and began to fight with the surrounding Black Leopard mercenaries in an intense battle. Although they held the advantage in numbers, the number of enemies that were consistently trying to hit Jian Chen numbered only around 7. The rest surrounded Jian Chen so that he would have no way to escape. At the same time, they would be able to jump in at any time to provide assistance if needed. Among the 7 mercenaries that were fighting Tianxiong, there were 5 Saint Masters and 2 Great Saints. The people of the Black Leopard mercenaries weren't stupid. They knew that a person capable of incurring the wrath of the Tianxiong clan couldn't possibly be weak. Thus, the 5 Saint Masters attacked him at the same time. Tianxiong, however, was handling the 5 Saint Masters and the 2 Great Saints with ease. Previously, when he only had the strength of a middle Great Saint, he had already dared to face the many Saint Master experts of the Tianxiong clan. Obviously, now that his strength had already improved to the peak Great Saint level, he'd have no problem fighting these mercenaries. He was now only 1 step away from reaching Saint Master level. Although the increase in level from middle to peak Great Saint was a small one in name, Tianxiong's strength had multiplied greatly during this period. Now that he had peak Great Saint powers, the simultaneous attacks from the 5 Saint Masters wasn't as difficult to deal with as his previous experience in Wake City. Tianxiong's sword was unparalleled in speed, striking out in all directions as an offense and defense at the unbelievably fast speed of light. The light wind sword continued to collide with the other Saint weapons, causing metallic clanging sounds to screech out. After each collision, the strong amount of Saint force from the weapons would diffuse through the area, causing dust and smoke to pervade the air. Tianxiong's sword began to speed up even more as it blocked the other Saint weapons. It then flashed out like silver lightning, piercing 2 of the Great Saints' throats. Charlie. Ching Buping. Seeing 2 people die in front of them, the Black Leopard mercenaries let out painful cries at the loss of their 2 Great Saints. Those who had a great relationship with the ones who had just died immediately roared in anger as they charged at Tianxiong. Tianxiong dodged out of the circle the Saint Masters had put up and began to fight intensely with the Great Saints. After a few flashes of his sword, more mercenaries had their throats and hearts pierced, and died as well. You dare to kill the members of our Black Leopard mercenaries? You're courting death, Tianxiong. The leader of the Black Leopard grew furious after seeing so many people die by the hands of Tianxiong, and he rushed toward to stab Tianxiong with his long spear. Almost as if he had eyes on the back of his head, Tianxiong suddenly turned around and thrusted his long sword out. Ding! The sound of steel meeting steel rang out as the silver light wind sword and the long spear clashed with each other in midair. As the 2 came into contact, Tianxiong didn't take a single step back. Instead, he stepped past the spear toward the captain, and with a flash of his blade, the light wind sword stabbed into the throat of the leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries. With a squelch, the tip of the bloody sword appeared on the other side of the man's throat. The leader of the Black Leopard mercenaries grew stiff as he stared at the sword in his throat with disbelief. His pupils rolled around furiously as he stared at Tianxiong and spoke with difficulty. How could how could I, die by your hand? Captain. Captain. Captain Cargill. Seeing their leader stabbed through his throat, the expressions of all the mercenaries changed. After standing there in a daze for a while, they all began to shout in alarm. He has killed Captain Cargill. My brothers, let's avenge the captain's death, avenge Captain Cargill, everyone forward, kill this Tianxiong. The mercenaries suddenly became motivated once more as they charged at Tianxiong. How reckless! Tianxiong sneered as he pulled out his sword. The blade flashed as he charged towards the foremost people, instantly penetrating a few more throats. Tianxiong's figure nimbly flashed through the crowd as he stabbed out at the people with wild abandonment. The mercenaries fighting against him fell one by one as they faced up against Tianxiong's superbly fast sword. Those who had the strength of a great saint didn't have the ability to defend themselves. Even the Saint Masters weren't able to hold up for very long. In a short moment, another 10 mercenaries had died at Tianxiong's sword, leaving behind 2 Saint Masters and 4 Great Saints. The 6 people had already lost their wills to fight. They exchanged mutual looks with each other, knowing that continuing on this road would end with death. The only road left to take was to run. With this thought, the 6 mercenaries immediately spread out in 4 directions without any hesitation in an effort to escape Tianxiong. Tianxiong sneered. His gaze swept across the area, eventually landing on a Great Saint mercenary. His body flickered slightly as he chased after the great saint with extreme speed. As for the other 5 mercenaries, Tianxiong took no heed of them. That great saint who had been trying to escape from Tianxiong's pursuit was blocked off by him in the blink of an eye. You! What are you going to do? Seeing Tianxiong appear right in front of him, the mercenary's face grew pale as he began to shake and timidly pulled out his saint weapon. The light wind sword disappeared from Tianxiong's hand as he crossed both arms across his chest. Staring at the mercenary who was close to his age, he said indifferently, "Do you wish to live?" "Of course." That mercenary replied almost instantaneously. But the question then registered in his mind, and his expression grew hopeful as he asked incredulously, "Could it be you're willing to let me go?" "Letting you go won't make much of a difference to me, and killing you will have no meaning either. As long as you cooperate with me and tell me what I need to know, then I will let you go." Hearing Tianxiong, the mercenary revealed a joyful expression. "Okay, as long as you let me go, I will definitely tell you all I know without hiding a single thing." Tianxiong nodded his head and said, "Let me ask you, what method is the Tianxiong clan using to deal with me, and how did your group recognize me?" Without hesitation, the mercenary immediately replied, "The Tianxiong clan used the mercenary union to place a 10,000 purple coin bounty on you. At the same time, they publicized some of your traits. That's why we immediately recognized you as the person that the Tianxiong clan had placed a high bounty of based on your fight with the tortoise beast." Tianxiong frowned. The Tianxiong clan placing such a high bounty on his capture was something far out of his expectations. After some hesitation, Tianxiong's eyes brightened as he smiled darkly. "I can let you go now, but you must do one task for me." "What task?" "As long as I, Shu Kellen, can find a way, I will definitely do it." That mercenary vowed in an exceptionally resolute tone, most likely in hopes of Tianxiong believing him. "When you return to Wake City, I want you to spread the news everywhere that I am in the Magical Beast Mountain Range. I want everyone to know that I am here, do you understand?" Tianxiong stared firmly at him. "Understood, I understand." Although he didn't know what Tianxiong was up to, this mercenary still immediately replied to him without asking questions. He was afraid that if he made Tianxiong angry, his life would be forfeit. Tianxiong thought for another second before continuing, "Also, tell them that I am seriously injured, got it?" "Got it, got it. Don't worry, I will definitely tell everyone what you want to be said." The mercenary hurriedly replied. Tianxiong nodded his head and waved his hand, "You can go." Almost as if that man had received an amnesty, he immediately began to run as fast as he could away from the area. Based on his appearance, it seemed as if he was afraid that Tianxiong would change his mind and take his life in the end. Tianxiong looked at the dozens of corpses on the ground and took their space belts. Walking over to a clean area, he began to take inventory of the things in each space belt. In the end, there was over 100 monster cores, several dozen purple coins, 300 gold coins and a few other essentials. Chapter 146, Breakthrough into a Saint. Master Tianxiong looked through all of the monster cores the Black Leopard mercenaries had. Among the 100 monster cores, a great amount of them were Class 3 monster cores and the rest were Class 2 monster cores. Just seeing the amount of monster cores painstakingly collected was proof of how long the mercenaries had stayed in the mountain range. It was a shame that because of their greed, many of them had lost their lives by Tianxiong's hands, and their bountiful harvest of monster cores was taken from them for Tianxiong to use. Their rewards for their painstaking labor had been taken by someone else. Tianxiong happily stored the 100 monster cores into his own space belt. Although he could personally get 20 or 30 monster cores in a single day, these 100 monster cores were not a small amount. With this amount, he would be able to sustain his cultivation for a few days. I hope that mercenary has accomplished the task I gave him. 10,000 purple coins as a bounty isn't a small amount at all. I'm willing to bet many mercenaries will be tempted by it. Tianxiong muttered to himself before revealing an expectant smile. I hope there are enough monster cores in their bags, this will be a great source of profit. The wage for avarice is death. Since they are trying to deal with me as a result of being unable to resist temptation, they can't blame me for being merciless." As he spoke, a flash of murderous intent radiated from Jian Chen. "For the next 2 days, I should work hard to improve my strength. Otherwise, if I come across a strong group, even though they may not be able to seize me, dealing with them will be quite difficult. Moreover, I still need to be able to defend myself from peak Great Saint Masters. With my current strength, going against peak Saint Masters isn't a problem, but if I come across a peak Great Saint Master, that could potentially be dangerous. If it doesn't go well, I might have to run away. While Wake City is only a Class 3 city with a few Great Saint Masters, that doesn't mean there are none to be seen. Just like the rarity of phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, nobody can guarantee that there wouldn't be any Great Saint Masters would come at me as a result of being unable to turn down the temptation of 10,000 purple coins. It seems that I need to quickly break through into the Saint Master level so that if I were to fight against Great Saint Master experts, I would still have a chance." After he made his plans, Jian Chen decided to not kill any more magical beasts and instead walked over to the side of a hill, where there was plenty of vegetation growing through the cracks of a steep rock face. Jian Chen walked up to the wall and gently pushed away the tall grass to reveal a hole. This cavern had been discovered by Jian Chen 2 days ago. Taking out a few materials from his space belt, he fashioned a torch and walked straight into the cavern. The passageway was very narrow, only one person would be able to walk over the uneven surfaces. Traces of handprints and footprints could be seen all over the place, showing that this cavern had been artificially expanded. Following the curved, 30-meter-long pathway, Jian Chen finally reached the end of the cavern. The circumference of the dead end was around 10 meters, and it had a height of 3 meters. The ground was very flat, and a stone table and bench sat nearby. 2 days before, when he had just discovered the cavern, Jian Chen had already known that others had stayed in this cavern for quite a while. However, a thick layer of dust covered the ground, clearly indicating that it had been ages since a person had last come here. After inspecting the cavern and confirming the security of it, Jian Chen stuck his torch onto the wall and sat down in the central point of the dead end while taking out a few Class 2 monster cores to cultivate. He was definitely safer in this hidden cavern compared to the open outside mountain range, and it allowed Jian Chen to freely enter a state of cultivation as he pleased. After hunting for a few days in the magical Beast Mountain range, he had amassed a large amount of monster cores. Adding on to the hundreds of monster cores he had gained from the Black Leopard Mercenaries, the amount of monster cores in Jian Chen's possession was enough for him to cultivate for 1 full month. Jian Chen wasn't at all worried about a shortage of monster cores. The energy within the monster cores became absorbed into Jian Chen's body at alarming speeds. The powerful energy gathered around his body, and was already gradually condensing into an extremely weak light. Because of the azure and violet glows within his dantian, Jian Chen's cultivation rate had improved 100 times over, but at the same time, the 2 glows robbed him of his cultivation. Jian Chen would only see a small part of what he absorbed and cultivated. Despite this, his cultivation speed was still a bit faster than before. Within Jian Chen's dantian, the strong saint force began to form the hazy shape of a sword. Although very blurry, it actually looked very similar to his light wind sword to the point where even the handle of the sword could be more or less distinguished. As Jian Chen continued to absorb the stream of energy within the monster cores, the sword within his dantian began to condense with saint force slowly as it expanded outwards. According to this speed, I will soon be able to break through into the Saint Master level. I estimate that it should take me from 10 days to half a month. But still, that won't do, that is too slow. Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows in thought. Because of his dantian, all of the energy from the monster cores was being robbed from him, causing him to feel a bit dissatisfied. Let's see if I can take that energy back. Suddenly, Jian Chen's heart shook as he began to concentrate on stealing the energy back from the 2 glows in his dantian. However, the speed in which the azure and violet glow was absorbing the energy was far too fast. Even when using all of his strength, he was only able to take back a small amount of energy. Despite this result, Jian Chen was still extremely satisfied. With this small amount of energy, his cultivation speed had improved by a good 10 or 20%. If he were to continue with this speed, it wouldn't take him more than a few days to make the breakthrough. In the cavern, Jian Shen was in a deep state of cultivation, but outside of the magical beast mountain range in Wake City, the entire city was in an uproar. When the news had escaped from the mercenary's mouth, no one knew whether or not it was genuine, but it had still caused every single mercenary to give it some thought. This person had a bounty placed on him for 10,000 purple coins. Although he was in the magical beast mountain range, he was alone and badly injured, so his strength would be sharply declining. This piece of unconfirmable news had made many mercenaries travel to the magical beast mountain range in hopes to confirm it. They had to make sure since it was 10,000 purple coins, and since the target was only a young man who was barely 20 years old, this was a simple task in the eyes of many people. The only trouble they would have would be to locate him. With a mission that had a target like this, there weren't many people that could resist the temptation of 10,000 purple coins. Despite many people telling them that the target this time was not weak at all and had even caused the Tianxiong clan to take a heavy loss, these mercenaries still had no fear. After a few days of Jian Shen staying in the magical beast mountain range, many cities around Wake City had already heard the news of Jian Shen being seriously injured. Many mercenaries had already begun to rush towards Wake City in huge numbers. Seeing the situation swell up like this, a few of the lone mercenaries who had confidence in their strength and luck looked toward the magical beast mountain range. To them, they would take advantage of this situation for their own advantage. In a flash, 7 days had passed. In the caverns of the magical beast mountain range, Jian Shen was sitting with his legs crossed on the ground while he cultivated. The torch on the wall had long since been extinguished, causing it to be completely pitch dark to the point of not being able to see his hands in front of his face. These past few days, Jian Shen had been in a cultivational state for almost the entire time. With the continuous increase in his inner saint force, Jian Shen could clearly feel that his strength was improving by leaps and bounds. While he had cultivated, he didn't move a single inch, aside from the times he needed to change the monster cores in his hand. Although, once he swapped the monster cores, he would go straight back to cultivating. Jian Shen hadn't eaten a single meal or took a sip of water while cultivating. He had sunk into such a deep meditational state that he had almost felt no hunger or thirst. In those days, a third of the monster cores in Jian Shen's space belt had already been used up. Surrounding him was the dust left behind by the spent monster cores piled up in a fine layer, especially on his crossed legs. Chapter 147, Identity revealed. At that moment, a wave of intense energy pulsed out from Jian Shen's body. At this hour, his cultivation speed had gone up by another noticeable amount, yet the energy from within the monster cores was pouring out like stampeding horses. It was already too much for Jian Shen to handle, and so the energy floated in the air around him, looking like a dense white cloud of fog. In the cavern, this fog was extremely noticeable as it floated about him. In fact, Jian Shen's body had begun to light up with the fog surrounding him, making his body stand out in the dark cavern. At the same time, all of his pores expanded to a larger size, almost as if they were the mouths of thirsty children. The white mist-like fog around Jian Shen then began to be swallowed into his body to be used as an energy source, consumed for Jian Shen's cultivation. As the pores on Jian Shen's body began to swallow the energy around him, he began to also feel a slightly painful sensation within his body. It was almost as if he had multiple insects crawling around his body and taking bites. With such an annoying and irritating sensation like this, any person would feel it deep within their hearts. As Jian Shen sat on the ground of the cavern with a peaceful look, he looked like a monk deep in meditation. Despite his peaceful demeanor, he could still feel the pain within his body. However, if one were to look at him, they would not be able to tell he was experiencing any pain. Meanwhile, within his body the energy that was absorbed through his pores was gathering within his dantian, where it was then absorbed by the sword within it. As the saint weapon absorbed the energy, it began to slowly change in a way that the shape of the sword grew more distinguished. All of the energy it had accumulated had added itself to its strength, and with each second the energy was absorbed, the saint weapon grew in length and size. Right now, Jian Shen was already at the threshold of breaking through into a saint master. This show continued on for 4 more hours until the monster core in Jian Chen's hands started to flicker. Immediately, Jian Chen took out a few Class 3 monster cores and began to cultivate again. Time slowly but silently went by, and not too long after, half of the day had been spent. Within the darkness of the cavern, the hazy figure of Jian Chen could be seen cultivating while the white, fog-like energy grew even more condensed, to the point where it was lighting up like moonlight. At that moment, an intense amount of energy flew out from Jian Chen and reverberated all over the cavern. The energy grew more and more intense as it eventually evolved into a squall that roared throughout the cavern. The dust kicked up everywhere and was scattered by the squall of energy. All of the dust surrounding Jian Chen had been blown in every direction as the white fog swirled around frantically, before finally entering Jian Chen's body. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had completely absorbed it all at a pace that was far faster than his original speed. With his current strength, he had finally made the breakthrough from a great saint to a saint master. Just as Jian Chen had made his breakthrough into the next level, the 2 glows within his dantian had suddenly stopped stealing the energy from Jian Chen. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes from his sitting position when all of a sudden a weak, mysterious glow came out from his eyes. Although it was weak, in the darkness of the cavern, it was very noticeable. Feeling that the saint force within his body was incomparably stronger than it was before, Jian Chen let loose an excited smile. Immediately, he brought out his light wind sword to his hand, which emitted a weak glow of light from its blade that dispersed the nearby darkness. An amazing glow gleamed within Jian Chen's eyes as in the next moment, a large amount of silver light was released from the blade as a strong amount of sword chi appeared. Lunging forward, the light wind sword was thrust through the air as a small amount of sword chi separated itself from the sword and shot toward the cavern walls with amazing speed. Within the dark cavern, that silver glow of sword chi shot out like lightning towards the cavern wall without a sound. The moment it struck against the wall, the sword chi disappeared, but not before leaving behind a hole from its impact. Jian Chen's body wavered slightly as he flew toward the wall like a demon possessed and struck out with his sword. PCH. Following the loud sound, the cliff that was stabbed by the light wind sword seemed almost as weak as tofu. The entire blade of the light wind sword had completely inserted itself into the wall and only the handle could be seen. The moment the light wind sword had stabbed into the wall, Jian Chen hadn't felt the slightest amount of obstructions from the momentum, making him feel as if the wall was a piece of bean curd instead of a stone wall. Although Jian Chen could easily stab into a stone wall in the past, it was not as easy as it was now. Slowly pulling out his sword, Jian Chen's heart was filled with confidence. If he were to go against Tianxiong Lai, although he might not win against him, he would at least be able to put up a good fight. Now that his strength was at the Saint Master level, Jian Chen was no longer worried if he were to come across a group of mercenaries. Even if there was a great Saint Master within their ranks, he would at least be able to run away if need be. Recollecting his light wind sword, Jian Chen dusted himself off from all the dust and ignited the fire once more, basking in the glow of the fire instead of the darkness for once. When Jian Chen exited from the cavern, 5 days had already passed. The intense sun was floating high in the sky, indicating that it was noon. Jian Chen calmly looked around himself before setting off in a random direction. I hope that mercenary from the Black Leopard Mercenaries did not let me down. Walking into the tall grass-infested forest, Jian Chen muttered to himself. Now that he was a Saint Master, his fighting strength was much higher, and within Wake City, there would definitely be very few people that could contend with him. Jian Chen began to idly stroll through the magical Beast Mountain Range. In this part of the mountain range, Class 2 and 3 magical beasts often strolled through the area. In the past, Jian Chen had to be careful as he walked through this area, but now, as long as he didn't come across another monster on the same level as the golden-striped silver snake, even if it was a Class 3 magical beast, he wouldn't have to worry. Just then, Jian Chen's ears trembled as he heard the soft sound of chatter from the direction in front of him. Jian Chen's line of sight was obstructed due to the extremely dense vegetation and couldn't see who was talking beyond the trees. Harry, we've been searching this area for days and circled around the magical Beast Mountain Range many times already. And yet we still haven't come across anyone that looks like Jian Chen. Do you think Jianchen is still here? What if he already escaped without a trace? Fiji, you can stop your complaining. The Magical Beast mountain range is huge with wild grass everywhere. Searching for a single person in this place is difficult, surely you understand that. Besides, the reports say that Jianchen is heavily injured. Even if he wanted to run, he wouldn't be able to go far. I'm not even sure if he's currently hiding somewhere trying to heal. That's right, I'm sure that Jianchen's hiding somewhere with heavy wounds not daring to come out. But it's still so troublesome. Many people have already entered the mountain range, and if Jianchen wasn't in a secret hiding spot, he would have long since been discovered by a group of people or even eaten by a magical beast. There's some truth to that, but we better slowly look for now. Even if we don't find him, we'll be able to kill a few magical beasts and take their monster cores to cultivate with. As soon as that last line was spoken, the group pushed past some tall grass and walked out onto the road where they could see Jianchen clearly in front of them. They could see Jianchen wearing animal leather and his face hidden by the accumulated filth of his time on the mountain range. The moment they saw Jianchen, the mercenaries looked blankly at him. At the same time, Jianchen took in the group in front of him. There was a total of 7 or 8 people in front of him with their ages looking to be around 30 years old. Their faces had traces of sweat and filth and their clothes were in a tattered condition, showing that they had been staying in the Magical Beast mountain range for a few days at the very least. One of the mercenaries walked forward to speak to Jianchen. Fellow friend, judging from your appearance, I presume you've been at the Magical Beast mountain range for quite some time now. Jianchen's face revealed a smile as he replied, that's right, I've been here on this mountain range for quite a few days. Then I'm not sure if this friend has heard about the most recent news from Wake City. The man asked Jianchen as he looked at him. Hearing this, Jianchen had a thoughtful look to him. This one is not sure if you are talking about the one named Jianchen. Correct, it is indeed about him. It would appear that this friend has indeed come into this Magical Beast mountain range looking for Jianchen. Judging by your appearances, I presume you've been in the mountain range for longer than we have. But perhaps, do you know any news about Jianchen? The mercenary said. News about Jianchen. Jianchen's smile grew strange as he nodded. You've asked the right person. Indeed, I know the whereabouts of Jianchen. What? You know where Jianchen is? Hearing this, the entire group of mercenaries were startled. Due to the words from this mercenary, everyone adopted a joyous expression on their faces. This was what they had wanted to hear, but they hadn't expected to hear it from this animal hide-wearing mercenary. They didn't think that this question they had thrown out casually would be answered in such a way. Fellow friend, where might Jianchen be? This one asks. A mercenary asked impatiently. To him, Jianchen was like a mountain of gold, and so he didn't bother to think if he had the strength to fight him. Jianchen was still smiling as he slowly said, not even far away, but right in front of your eyes. Jianchen looked at them with a curious stare. Seeing so many mercenaries trying to find me, it would seem that the 10,000 purple coin bounty from the Tianxiong clan has enticed many people. Jianchen thought to himself. Not far away, but right in front of our eyes. Hearing Jianchen, the mercenaries all repeated what he said under their breaths in thought. Very quickly the mercenaries came to a realization as they snapped their heads at him and stared in disbelief. What? You're Jianchen? Chapter 148, Spare Us. As the mercenaries cried out, their eyes landed on Jianchen with shock written all over their faces. Not a single one of them had thought that after looking everywhere in the Magical Beast mountain range, they would coincidentally come across him. What was more amusing was just how exactly they came across Jianchen. Another mercenary laughed bitterly as he stared at Jianchen. I say, fellow brother, you shouldn't joke around in such a manner just in case some idiot believes what you say and drags you off to the Tianxiong clan for the bounty. Hearing that mercenary, the other mercenaries saw the light and began to force a smile as well. The words Jianchen had said had truly shocked them. Fellow friend, right now Jianchen's name is infamous around this area. It would be best for you if you refrain from joking around like that again, or else you risk having trouble come looking for you. a mercenary said. Not a single one of them believed that this animal hide-wearing person was the Tianxiong they were looking for. Tianxiong laughed and said, "Then what would you need to believe that I'm Tianxiong?" According to what we know, Tianxiong's saint weapon is a thin long sword and is quite young. Around the age of 20 to be exact. His speed is quite fast, as is his sword strokes, to the point where even a few Saint Master experts aren't able to dodge them. It was said that because these Saint Masters weren't able to dodge his sword that they died by Tianxiong's hands. A mercenary said. A silver sword appeared in Tianxiong's hands. It was his light wind sword. Laughing, Tianxiong said, "Take a look, the sword Tianxiong uses, is it this one?" Hearing this, the mercenaries looked at the light wind sword in Tianxiong's hands with a curious look. "Ai. Look. This sword here has some resemblance." "That's right, it's quite similar, almost exactly the same." Right away, two mercenaries couldn't help but cry out. Hearing those two, the rest of the mercenaries began to grow serious as they looked at Tianxiong, their attitudes toward him slowly changing. "You really are Tianxiong." A mercenary stared at the dust-filled face of Tianxiong. As the way things were now, these mercenaries had all came to the conclusion that this person in front of them was the person they had been painstakingly looking for. Tianxiong laughed as he said, "That's right, I am Tianxiong. The Tianxiong that has been chased by the Tianxiong clan. Right now, I stand here waiting to see if you can capture and take me back to Wake City for the bounty." Hearing that, the mercenaries began to laugh out loud as they looked at each other before one of the mercenaries cried out, "My brothers, surround him." With that command, a mercenary rushed toward Tianxiong while the rest of the mercenaries hesitated for a moment before charging along with him. Surrounding Tianxiong in a circle. Just as Tianxiong absorbed the light wind sword, both of his hands rested against his chest as he looked at the mercenaries surrounding him. With disdain, he said, "It would appear that many people were tempted by the 10,000 purple coin bounty, but I didn't think that even great saints would come to capture me as well. Could it be that you didn't hear about how many Saint Masters died by my hand, or do you think your strength surpasses those of the Saint Masters?" The mercenaries all looked at Tianxiong with some hesitation as they listened to him, but one of the mercenaries cried out, "Tianxiong, you can stop pretending to be brave. Right now, everyone knows that you are heavily injured, so your strength is nowhere near the same level as it was. It would be best for you if you were to come with us obediently, otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. By that point, don't say that we bullied you." Tianxiong shook his head helplessly as he muttered, "It seems that the money has really addled your brains to the point where you don't even care for your own lives. Forget it, I don't feel like speaking with you anymore." Tianxiong then stopped talking before his body shook slightly before appearing instantly right in front of a close-by mercenary. Making a fist with his right hand, he slammed it into the nose of that mercenary without any fancy movements. "Ah!" The mercenary cried out in agony as he held his nose in pain. Blood began to slowly drip down from it, and before long the entire bottom part of his face was covered with blood. Tianxiong's fist had broken his nose. After breaking that mercenary's nose, Tianxiong didn't stop there. Immediately kicking at his stomach, the man was sent flying back 5 meters. Immediately after, Tianxiong's body disappeared and reappeared right in front of another mercenary with a great amount of saint force circling his leg. With that leg, he lashed out at the chest of the mercenary. Bang! Came the collision. The mercenary didn't have any time to react before being sent flying into the air with blood flying out from his mouth. "Tianxiong, what a lowly person you are for using a sneak attack. Everyone forward, take him." After Tianxiong had attacked those two mercenaries, the rest of the mercenaries were brought back to awareness and flew at Tianxiong with their saint weapons ready to slash. Tianxiong nimbly dodged the attacks and dashed forward, and with his fists at the ready, he attacked a few of the mercenaries at a rapid pace, causing an endless stream of sounds to be heard. Now that Tianxiong was a saint master, he could easily take care of those at the great saint level without using his light wind sword. Every sword user thought their swords to be extremely important, and many viewed the sword to be akin to their second life. Tianxiong was no exception. Looking at these mercenaries in front of him, if he were to use his sword to kill these mercenaries, it would be like killing a chicken with a cow cleaver. Despite Jianchen utilizing the art of Chinese boxing, these mercenaries were still powerless to respond. Within a few breaths, they had fallen to the ground with bloody noses and swollen faces. Jianchen clapped his hands together as he looked at the pained mercenaries on the ground and laughed. Do you still believe you can take me in to get that reward? Lord Jianchen, please spare us please. We were possessed and seduced to the point of foolishness by the thought of the reward. You must be generous, please spare us this time. A mercenary crawled from the ground and began to bow his head to Jianchen while pleading in a loud voice. Chapter 149, Meeting the Zhou mercenaries. Once more highlight above for chapter title. Seeing the mercenary continuously bow his head, Jianchen furrowed his eyebrows. These types of people were the ones he couldn't stand the most. Fiji, what are you doing? Hurry up and get up. You're throwing away our face. Even if we die, that will be it. What use is there to fear? Seeing that mercenary continue to bow his head down at Jianchen, one of the other mercenaries couldn't help but curse at him. Fiji, you cowardly bastard, in my entire life I have never seen such a brother like you. The mercenary called Fiji, who was kneeling, had caused the rest of his mercenaries' friends to look on at him with an extreme amount of disdain. Jianchen looked at the mercenaries who were shouting at Fiji with some admiration. For those who clung to their lives so cowardly like Fiji, Jianchen held them in contempt the most. Do you have something to say still? Jianchen ignored the one who was bowing his head and looked at the other mercenaries. Hearing that, the mercenaries looked at each other with a sorrowful look of regret. They clearly knew that they were under Jianchen's mercy, but it was most likely that they would stay within the magical beast mountain range forever without being able to see tomorrow's sun. Whether you kill us or cut our flesh, do what you wish, there is nothing more to say. A stubborn mercenary said firmly. Jianchen had brought them to heel by using his fists and legs alone. This type of strength had caused them all to consider running away, but they clearly knew within their hearts that running away would have practically no chance of success. I'll give you all one chance to live. Hand over all of your Class 2 monster cores, and you may go. Otherwise, you will all die here. Pick now, I will wait for your decision. Jianchen said gently. Faced with that decision, none of the mercenaries hesitated at all. Immediately nodding their heads, they all obediently took out every single Class 2 monster core from within their space belt and piled them all together neatly. Although they were all very reluctant to part with them, they weren't stupid and knew that this wasn't the time to be stingy. Jianchen swept his gaze over the pile where there weren't even over 10 Class 2 monster cores. Now hand over the monster cores. Obediently, one of the mercenaries scooped up the monster cores from the ground and placed them all within Jianchen's hand. Once Jianchen took the monster cores in his hands, he waved them away. Go on then, I'm feeling generous today. I may be letting you go, but if we meet each other again in the same situation, don't expect it to be the same. The mercenaries didn't bother to stay around and ran with their tails between their legs. Seeing the mercenaries disappear into the forest, Jianchen smiled as he stored away the Class 2 monster cores within his space belt. Kneading his fists, he muttered to himself, I don't know how long it has been since I've used my fists to attack people. Although it feels a little weird, it's not all that bad. For these mercenaries, killing Class 2 magical beasts for their monster cores is not an easy task. I've taught them a lesson, but since this is their only source of Class 2 monster cores, this will definitely not be the last time I will see them. Sooner or later, many more people will come by this way. Haha, I don't know how many people there will be, but with a prize of 10,000 purple coins, I hope that even stronger people come. Otherwise, my plan will progress too slowly. With this type of good opportunity, I will definitely profit as much as I can. Since all those who are trying to find me are enemies, I won't need stay my hand. The weak are food for the strong, this is the absolute rule of this world. Jianchen's face slowly revealed a look of expectation. Because of his cultivation, his monster core consumption rate was dozens of times or maybe 100 times more than others. He had no other choice but try to earn more monster cores because of the glows in his dantian. He had been forced to give up using the world essence to cultivate and now only relied on the monster cores instead. Not too long after the mercenaries had left, they immediately spread the news of Jian Chen's whereabouts. Soon enough, Jian Chen's position in the magical beast mountain range was well known by everyone. Quickly, every single mercenary and other parties of power began to rush over to try and overtake him. At this moment, Jian Chen was sitting in the area with no intentions of leaving. Sitting on a tree 30 meters away, he was completely concealed by the tree leaves with barely any parts of his body being visible between the gaps in the leaves. In this situation, it was very difficult to see him. Not too long after, a group of 40 mercenaries slowly walked into the area near where Jian Chen was sitting. All of them were wearing steel helmets with full body armor while being armed to the teeth. Not a single one of them looked to be in disarray, and instead looked to be very well trained. The moment Jian Chen saw these mercenaries through the gaps in the leaves, the name of a single mercenary group flashed through his brain. Immediately, a flash of killing intent could be seen in his eyes as his face grew serious. Crash! A sound came from within the leaves as Jian Chen leaped down from the tree top. What person? Be careful, someone came down from the trees. Just as Jian Chen flew down from the treetops, the armored mercenaries below began to shout as each one of them pulled out a saint weapon at the ready to fight. Jian Chen's feet kicked off the tree, causing him to fly 20 meters forward before finally landing nimbly on the ground right in front of the mercenaries. Who are you? The frontmost armored mercenary stepped toward Jian Chen yelling for him to identify himself. Jian Chen's solemn face looked through the group with a careful eye. It was a shame that he saw no familiar figures within the group. You are the Zhou mercenaries. Jian Chen said, it was no question. That's right, we are the Zhou mercenaries. Who are you, and why do you block our path? The mercenary who was at the front slowly demanded. The Zhou mercenaries weren't weak, and could be considered to be within the top 5 mercenary groups within Wake City. Adding on to their affiliation with the Zhou clan in Wake City, it had given them plenty of arrogance. Once he had confirmed their identities, a large amount of killing intent emerged from Jian Chen in waves of energy. Without any more words, Jian Chen took out his light wind sword and began to charge at the Zhou mercenaries. The last time Jian Chen had met the Zhou mercenaries, they had came across a Class 5 cub in the magical beast mountain range. Although the original members of that Zhou mercenary group weren't here, they had cost the flame mercenaries their lives and caused them to lose the Class 5 cub. Plus, while running away from the Class 5 Golden Fur Tiger King, if it weren't for that member of the Zhou mercenaries who threw the cub at Captain Kendall, the Golden Fur Tiger King wouldn't have chased after the flame mercenaries. So the entire destruction of the flame mercenaries and the death of everyone in it could all be blamed on the Zhou mercenaries. Chapter 150, Extermination. Jian Chen quickly closed the 10 meters between him and the Zhou mercenaries. With his light wind sword, he thrust it toward the frontmost mercenary's throat in hopes to kill him. In a flash, the sword had found itself right in front of his throat. Seeing the sword come at him with incomparably fast speeds, the leader's face underwent a drastic change as he realized that he wasn't able to react in time to block with his own saint weapon. Hastily, he twisted the entire top half of his body to dodge this fatal sword strike, and without hesitation, he retreated backward in order to gain some distance from Jian Chen. Even after Jian Chen's attack had failed to land, his face did not waver at all. Continuing onward, he dashed forward toward the other Zhou mercenaries ahead of him and lashed out with his light wind sword and stabbed 4 great saints through their throats in a flash. Their armor was of no use as Jian Chen had speared through the steel metal as if it were tofu. To make a long story short, in the instant that the 4 mercenaries were killed, the other Zhou mercenaries hadn't even had time to react. From the moment Jian Chen had moved his hand to the moment the 4 mercenaries had been killed, the other mercenaries didn't even have time to breath. Stay your hand. The first mercenary that had dodged Jian Chen's blade cried out. After seeing how fast Jian Chen had struck out, he had realized how strong he was. He would not be an easy opponent, so at this current moment, there was no way the Zhou mercenaries would want to fight against this person without reason. However, Jian Shen had turned a deaf ear toward him. The Zhou mercenaries were already on the top of his to-kill list. His light wind sword flashed continuously as it wreaked havoc on his surroundings, his blade almost resembling the death god's scythe that reaped the lives of the Zhou mercenaries without mercy. The great saints of the Zhou mercenaries simply had no chance to defend themselves. They weren't able to catch sight of the blade and thus were stabbed straight through the throat. Even the saint masters among the Zhou mercenaries could only defend themselves against a few strikes before Jian Shen claimed their lives with his light wind sword as well. Jian Shen's strength against saint masters was far stronger than it was before his breakthrough now. These saint master experts would no longer have the ability to harm Jian Shen, and just touching his clothes would already be a difficult task. Jian Shen's figure constantly flickered as he traveled in between mercenaries almost as if he were creating doppelgangers of himself. As he paid attention to his surroundings, each strike toward his body was carefully predicted and dodged. While he was able to injure the enemies around him, his enemies weren't able to do the same to him. Jian Shen's attacks were incomparably sharp beyond anyone's imagination. In the midst of 40 mercenaries, Jian Shen had already stabbed and killed 20 mercenaries within the span of a few seconds, some of which were saint masters. Seeing how Jian Shen didn't even expend much energy after killing 20 mercenaries so quickly, the leader of the Zhou mercenaries had felt an icy cold fear within his heart. Hidden behind his stone-cold helmet was his pale face. In his mind he had felt a great deal of puzzlement. He didn't know just when the Zhou mercenaries had offended such a strong person, but without even saying a single word, this person had attacked the Zhou mercenaries ruthlessly. The leader was unable to keep calm and think about what to do, but his brain had quickly come to a conclusion. Immediately turning around, he made a decision to run away. He knew in his heart that he was completely powerless against the great display of strength shown by Jian Shen. Even if he were to stay behind, he wouldn't make much of a difference and would only die there. So if death were to be the case here, he would rather take the chance and run away. Before he could even run 20 meters away, the figure of a person quickly appeared right behind him with an extreme amount of speed. In the blink of an eye the person had already caught up with him as the silver glint of a sword left behind a brilliant glow of light as it arced toward the escaping figure. The leader of the Zhou mercenaries was a peak saint master, so the moment he felt an extraordinary amount of sword chi, he immediately ducked onto the ground and rolled away without looking backward. The moment both of his hands hit the ground, he pushed himself back up onto his feet as a long spear simultaneously appeared in his hand. With a large amount of saint force encompassing the spear, he stabbed toward Jian Shen. Jian Shen swayed slightly instead of dodging away and kept charging towards the leader once more. His arm shook as the light wind sword covered the entire area with its bright glow, causing everyone who looked at it to be dazzled at this seemingly unreal experience. Against a sword whose light seemed to encompass the entire sky, the peak saint master expert didn't know what he should do to protect himself. In that moment of hesitation, the silver blade of Jian Shen reappeared from within the glow and stabbed straight through his throat. Bang! Jian Shen kicked at the leader's chest, causing him to fly far backward. Holding onto his bloody light wind sword, Jian Shen ran toward the remaining Zhou mercenaries in an effort to kill them. Jian Shen had no intention of letting a single member leave this place alive. Captain Shen Yunlong has died. Captain Shen Yunlong was killed. Captain Shen Yunlong has already been killed. Everybody run. The death of their captain had caused every mercenary to feel an extreme amount of fear within their hearts as everyone began to lose their fighting spirit. Against Jian Shen, who seemed like a god of death, their courage was almost non-existent. Throwing away their helmets, they began trying to escape. After Jian Shen had killed some of the members, the remaining few had all started to run away with all their strength in every possible direction. Although Jian Shen wasn't slow, killing every single mercenary in this case wouldn't be an easy task. You Zhou mercenaries won't leave this place alive. Jian Shen's eyes had a glow of killing intent behind them as he instantly began to pour out sword chi in tremendous waves from his sword. Immediately, the light wind sword separated from Jian Shen's hand as it flew out with tremendous speed. Transforming into a silver ray of light, it began to fly toward the closest mercenary in an attempt to kill him. At this moment, Jian Shen didn't care about keeping his soul sword a secret. he just wanted the entire Zhou mercenaries to be destroyed. The light wind sword shot through the air like a silver streak of light throughout the area as it stabbed through the throats of all the mercenaries who were trying to escape. In a matter of seconds the remaining 10 mercenaries had all fallen to the ground dead. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.